Chapter 165. No one had expected Lu Yi to take the initiative to attack. This caused many people in Myriad Demon Ridge to suspect that he was seeking death because his spirit artifact was broken in a flash. The two had already exchanged blows. Clanging sounds rang out as their spirit artifacts collided. Hu Ping was also a weapon cultivator, and the spirit artifact in his hand was also a saber, but unlike Lu Ye's saber, Hu Ping's was much wider and shorter. It was a traditional machete. As a disciple of a third-grade sect, Hu Ping's strength was not bad. Although he did not have a record of killing enemies above his realm, few people in the same realm were his opponent. In particular, when he displayed his saber technique, it was like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. If Lu Ye's saber was sharp and aggressive, then Hu Ping's saber was violent and fierce. However, after fighting with Lu Yi, a fifth-order cultivator, Hu Ping was shocked to find that he could not display his saber technique at all. His opponent's spirit artifact was broken, but Hu Ping's speed and strength were not something he could compete with. After a few slashes, Yang Kai was unable to block his opponent's fierce attacks. His body kept retreating as the web between his thumb and forefinger cracked. He felt like he wasn't fighting a fifth-order cultivator at all, but a ferocious beast covered in blood qi. The pressure was too strong. With a clang, Hu Ping's body leaned back, and the spirit artifact in his hand almost flew out. He wanted to stabilize his body, but his foot slipped. Too many people had died in this ring, and the blood of the challengers had dyed the entire Golden Light Peak red. Hu Ping, who had just stepped onto the stage, suffered a big loss because of this. A bright saber light flashed, and Hu Ping forcibly stabilized his body. He wanted to block with his saber, but the saber light bypassed his spirit artifact and slashed down fiercely. At this moment it was too late to block. Hu Ping also had a lot of experience in life and death battles, so he steeled his heart and slashed his saber towards Lu Ye's neck. The battle had only started for 10 breaths, but the two sides were already in a life-and-death situation, causing exclamations from all around. There was no panic in Hu Ping's eyes, because he knew that Lu Ye's broken blade couldn't do anything to him. His opponent's spirit weapon was indeed of good quality, but since it was broken, it couldn't display its original power, so it wasn't much of a threat to him. However, this slash of his was different. It was aimed at Lu Ye's neck. If the other party did not activate that defensive spirit pattern, this slash would be able to determine life and death. Just as he expected, when his spirit weapon slashed at Lu Ye's neck, the spirit inscriptions there blocked the attack. However, he did not stop. Instead, he continued to press forward, using this opportunity to consume his opponent's spirit energy. However, the pain in his chest gave him a shock. He spat out blood, and Hu Ping could not care about anything else. He hurriedly used the force of the chop to jump back. Lowering his head to look, he saw that there was a foot-long wound on his chest, and the armor he wore had been directly cut open, losing all of its spiritual light. Hu Ping's scalp suddenly felt numb. He couldn't figure out what was going on. The reason he dared to take Lu Ye's blade head-on was because the spirit weapon in Lu Ye's hand was broken, greatly reducing its power. The second reason was that he had an armor protecting him. Although the quality of this armor was not high, it still had some defensive power. Several times, he had relied on this armor to escape danger. However, this time, the armor had been cut open, unable to provide him with any protection. Wasn't his opponent's spirit weapon broken? How could it still be so sharp? All kinds of thoughts churned in his mind, but there was no time to think, because Lu Yi had already taken advantage of Hu Ping's distraction to stab out with his blade. Fiery red spiritual power clung to the broken long saber, containing an indestructible power. Hu Ping roared and raised his saber to block. Clanging sounds rang out again as the two of them exchanged blows. However, Hu Ping had been distracted and was now completely suppressed. He felt that not only was his opponent's offensive fierce, but it was also endless. After a dozen breaths of time, Hu Ping suddenly froze in place. He raised the large blade in his hand but was powerless to swing it down. He looked down at his chest, his eyes full of fear. At his chest, the broken blade had pierced through the broken armor without any hindrance. Close at hand, their eyes met. Lu Yi looked at the enemy in front of him with a calm expression. I am called Lu Yi. Blue blood sex Lu Yi. With a kick, Hu Ping flew far away and fell to the ground, motionless. Lu Yi gasped for breath and staggered back to his previous position. He sat down cross-legged, threw a spirit pill into his mouth, and lowered his head. Above the golden light there was still no sound. After a while, Hu Ping's senior brother came forward to check and found that Hu Ping was deader than dead. Whispers began to ring out, and gradually became noisy. Hu Ping had also been defeated. In this battle where Myriad Devil Ridge was infinitely close to victory, Hu Ping had been killed. One had to know that Myriad Devil Ridge was prepared to end this dispute in this battle. No matter who saw it, Lu Yi, whose spirit weapon was broken, was no match for Hu Ping. But in fact, Hu Ping had only taken 2 slashes from Lu Yi before dying. Lu Yi had also been slashed twice by him, but both were neutralized by the defensive spirit rune. Some cultivators had already seen the problem. It was still the spirit weapon. Although it was broken, it did not seem to affect its power. The Myriad Devil Ridge cultivator called Xian had a grave expression and his face was slightly pale. He was secretly glad that Lu Yi had chosen Hu Ping. Otherwise, he might have been the one to fall in this battle. Everyone thought that Lu Ye's fangs had been broken, but who knew that those broken fangs were still as sharp and unstoppable? Looking at the figure sitting there quietly with his head lowered, as if he could fall at any time, Xian sighed softly. Although Hu Ping had been killed, it would not affect him too much. The next battle would be him. If he lost, then only the people from the Sacred Flame sect would be left. That guy from the Sacred Flame sect was weaker than him and Hu Ping, so there was no hope for him. So, no matter what, he could not lose this battle. If he wanted to win, he could not be cut by his opponent. The lethality of that spirit weapon was too terrifying, but he was also a weapon refiner. When he fought in close combat, he could not avoid it. He had a headache. Before he could come up with a countermeasure, someone from Myriad Devil Ridge reminded him, "Time's up." Li Baxin glared fiercely. When Lu Yi began to rest, the incense that he had lit went out. Lu Yi, who had been resting with his head lowered, raised his head again. Under the gaze of thousands of eyes, he stood up with his broken saber as support, his body staggering and his footsteps unsteady. The group of Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators' eyelids twitched. Lu Yi looked like he could fall at any time, but it turned out that once this guy started fighting, he began to become more energetic. If they had not seen him fight more than 40 battles in a row with their own eyes, they would have thought that this guy was just putting on an act. No one knew what kind of faith and willpower was supporting this trivial fifth-order cultivator to not fall, allowing him to remain invincible in the blood-soaked arena. Xian walked out and the two sides introduced themselves as usual. Lu Ye's ears were buzzing, caused by overdraft of his energy. He could not hear what the others were saying, but it did not matter. Big Senior Sister would remember it. Hong. The moment Spirit Chi exploded, the two figures rushed towards each other. This Myriad Devil Ridge cultivator was not frightened by Lu Ye's terrifying record and did not even take a defensive stance. Instead, he took the initiative to fight. As a fellow weapon refiner, they both knew that offense was the best defense. The sound of spirit weapons colliding could be heard as the two figures constantly moved around in the arena. Sparks flew everywhere as they collided. Everyone from the Myriad Demons Ridge felt their hearts in their throat. They knew that if they lost this battle, they would really have no chance. Although there was still the Sacred Flame sect left, that person from the Sacred Flame sect was not as strong as Hu Ping or Xian. If they were to fight against Lu Yi, only death would await them. 3 breaths, 5 breaths, 10 breaths, 20 breaths, 50 breaths. The myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were nervously watching the battle breathed a sigh of relief. The situation had stabilized. All of them secretly praised Lu Yi. As expected of a second-grade sect, Lu Ye's foundation was indeed stronger than the others. None of the previous challengers had been able to fight Lu Yi for such a long time without showing any signs of weakness. Some people had lasted for a long time under Lu Ye's hands, but they had only been chased around. They had been focused on consuming Lu Ye's spirit qi and laying the foundation for victory for their successors. This was the first time someone had been able to fight Lu Yi head-on for so long. With this kind of strength, he already had the capital to fight above his realm. At this moment, the more Lu Yi fought, the more awake he became. Although his ears were still buzzing, and there were even some blurry scenes flashing before his eyes, the pressure from the other side told him that this was an opponent whose strength and speed were not inferior to his. To deal with such an opponent, he could only end the battle quickly. Lu Yi knew his situation. He did not have much spirit qi left. If he continued to fight like this, he would definitely not be able to hold on. Once his spirit qi was exhausted and he could not defeat his opponent, he would only be waiting for death. As this thought flashed through his mind, he did not block or dodge the opponent's attack. Instead, he slashed out with his saber. This attack gave the myriad Demon Ridge cultivator a fright. Lu Yi dared to take his attack, but he did not dare to take Lu Ye's saber. The many lives he had taken before told him that the spirit artifact in Lu Ye's hand was ridiculously strong. It was not a spirit artifact that a low-level cultivator could possess. He hurriedly dodged. His rhythm was instantly disrupted. Originally, he and Lu Yi were evenly matched, but when he began to defend, he lost his initial sharpness and his hands and feet became tied. As one retreated and one advanced, Lu Yi had already slashed out 7 or 8 times. Although he was not able to do his best, the situation had already begun to reverse. Lu Yi gradually gained the upper hand and slowly suppressed his opponent. The man obviously knew that this could not go on. Just as he was thinking of countermeasures, there was a cracking sound and his hand suddenly became lighter. Looking up, he was shocked. His spirit artifact had been cut in half. Lu Yi had fought more than 40 battles in a row. Other than his spirit artifact saber being cut in half by the myriad Demon Ridge, he had never cut an enemy's spirit artifact in half. The sharpness spirit inscription was indeed powerful, but the spirit artifact itself was also very sturdy. His previous opponents had either been killed by a few slashes or avoided a direct confrontation with him. He naturally did not have this opportunity. But the person in front of him was different. Previously, when the two sides fought, every time their spirit artifacts collided. Even if Lu Yi did not activate the sharpness spirit inscription every time, his opponent's spirit artifact would not be able to withstand it. The saber slashed down, bringing with it a spray of blood. Chapter 166. On the stage, Xian quickly retreated, but a wound still appeared on his chest and abdomen. Opposite him, Lu Yi rushed forward and slashed again. Xian rolled on the ground and narrowly avoided the attack. When he got up, his body was covered in blood and soil. He was in an extremely sorry state. Just as he steadied himself, he felt another gust of wind behind his head. He pounced forward like a mad dog and felt a chill on his head. A large piece of his scalp had been cut off. Falling to the ground with difficulty, Xian knew that he was going to die this time. He really couldn't figure out why his opponent's spirit artifact was not affected when it was broken, but his spirit artifact was broken and it was like a decoration in his hand. There was no way he could dodge the next attack, but his pride as a second-grade sect made him grit his teeth and not shout. He didn't shout, but someone shouted for him, "Admit defeat!" It was one of Xian's senior sisters. She knew that if she didn't shout, her junior brother would die. Even if she was unwilling, even if she knew that after shouting, Myriad Demon Ridge would no longer have a chance, she couldn't just watch her junior brother die like this. Lu Yi, who was chasing after him, stopped and looked at Xian, who stood up in a sorry state. Deafening cheers came from the Grand Heaven Alliance camp. The cheers of thousands of people gathered together and made the entire Golden Light Peak tremble. Lu Yi, who was dizzy, was confused. He walked back with his broken saber and looked at Li Baxian and Wei Yang. Are you done? Grand Heaven Alliance was celebrating as if it was the new year, so it was inevitable that he would misunderstand. Li Baxian smiled. Not yet. Lu Yi sat down cross-legged and threw a spirit pill into his mouth. He switched his secret art to gluttony meal to speed up the refinement of the pill. What was there to be happy about? There's one last match. Li Baxian's voice came from behind Lu Yi. Do you see that guy with the flame mark on his forehead? He's from Sacred Flame Sect. He's your only opponent. But don't be afraid, Sacred Flame Sect is full of Dharma cultivators. If it was a battle in the wild, a sixth-order Dharma cultivator would be a threat to Lu Yi, but in this limited arena, the threat of a Dharma cultivator to Lu Yi was greatly reduced. Li Baxian was incomparably glad that he had agreed on the size of the arena when he signed the Heaven Fate contract with the Myriad Devil Ridge. The Dharma cultivators sent by the Myriad Devil Ridge died the fastest. Lu Ye's speed was too fast. He arrived in front of them in a few steps. Those Dharma cultivators could only use 1 or 2 spells. Those who were stronger could use 3 or even 4 spells. However, Lu Yi had the defensive spirit tattoo. As long as his eyesight was good enough, he could easily block those spells. Once he got close to them, those Dharma cultivators could only wait for death or admit defeat. Lu Yi raised his eyes and looked towards Myriad Demon Ridge. Sure enough, he saw a sixth-order cultivator with a flame mark on his forehead standing there, waiting. Looks like this is my last opponent. He didn't let his guard down because of this. He silently checked his own condition. He didn't have much spiritual power left, only a little more than 10%. Even if he had the time for a stick of incense to burn, he could barely recover 20%. If he used it sparingly, it should be enough to deal with the last battle. Senior brother, can we go home after the fight? Lu Yi asked softly. Let's go home after the fight. Li Baxian replied. Got it. Lu Yi lowered his head and tried his best to recover his physical strength. The Grand Heaven Alliance was still in a jubilant mood. After Hu Ping and Xian, who were both disciples from second and third rank sects, had died and admitted defeat, the remaining Sacred Fire Sect Dharma cultivators were no match for Lu Yi. From the Grand Heaven Alliance's point of view, Lu Yi had already secured victory. In contrast, Myriad Demon Ridge's side was gloomy. Everyone's expression was ugly. It was no wonder they were like this. In the past 2 days, Myriad Demon Ridge's side had taken a huge advantage. Except for the first battle where a fifth-order body cultivator went up to test the waters, the rest were all sixth-order cultivators. However, in just 2 days, they were defeated by Lu Yi from Blue Blood Sect. The only remaining Sacred Flame Sect disciple was doomed to be unable to do anything. It could be said that in this game between the two camps, the Myriad Devil Ridge had lost completely. Those who died were secondary. Fighting against the Grand Heaven Alliance would definitely result in death. The main reason was that they had no way to explain to their sections. The cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge, who came here, could almost imagine how furious their sects would be when the news was spread back to their sects. The experts from the Myriad Devil Ridge, who were on the Spirit Stream list, approached the cultivator from the Sacred Flame Sect, who was preparing to fight. They whispered something to him, and the cultivator from the Sacred Flame Sect slowly shook his head, causing the experts' faces to darken. An incense stick of time seemed to have passed in the blink of an eye. On the top of the golden light, Lu Yi stood up with the help of his broken saber for the last time. He walked up the ring step by step and quietly looked at the Sacred Flame Sect cultivator. The other party stood in front of the Myriad Demon Ridge camp with his head lowered. He didn't do anything. This situation caused many people from Grand Heaven Alliance to hiss. Some shouted for Lu Yi to go up and kill him, while others shouted for the Sacred Flame sect cultivator to admit defeat and go home to plant sweet potatoes. The Myriad Demon Ridge lost, but they didn't want to lose. Some of the more irritable people began to curse at the Grand Heaven Alliance people. The scene was chaotic for a moment. If it weren't for the restriction of the Heaven's secret contract, the two sides would have had a chaotic battle to determine the winner. Just as the Myriad Demon Ridge people were getting impatient from waiting, someone finally walked up the ring slowly. The noise suddenly subsided. Several thousand pairs of eyes stared at the cultivator who walked up the ring. However, that person wasn't the Sacred Flame sect disciple who was preparing to fight, but another female cultivator. Li Baxian's gaze immediately sharpened. What is the Myriad Demon Ridge doing? It couldn't be helped. Although the female cultivator who walked up was also from the Sacred Flame sect, he could tell that she wasn't a sixth-order cultivator just by looking at the spirit light on her body. She was a seventh-order cultivator. The Spirit Stream List Masters from the Myriad Demon Ridge obviously didn't expect this to happen. The Heaven's secret contract had already stipulated that the highest cultivation level of the challenger was the sixth order. The appearance of a seventh-order cultivator was undoubtedly a violation of the rules. Openly challenging the Heaven's secret contract was an extremely daring act. Once the Heaven's secret contract started to punish all the masters who left their blood fingerprints on the Heaven's secret contract, and the sects behind them would have to attack the Sacred Flame sect, regardless of whether the Myriad Demon Ridge was willing or not. Ever since the Spirit Stream battlefield, no one had dared to violate the Heaven's secret contract. Even if the Sacred Flame sect's people were crazy, they wouldn't do such an unwise thing. They were playing with the fate of their entire sect. Although Li Baxian's gaze was sharp and his tone was cold, he was actually quite happy in his heart. If the Sacred Flame sect really wanted to play like this, it would be beneficial to his side. He muttered in his heart, "Have these guys really lost their minds because of their Sacred Flame?" The masters from Grand Heaven Alliance all thought so. Otherwise, they wouldn't have just sat there quietly. They had already stopped the seventh-order female cultivator when she stepped onto the stage. "What are you doing?" On the Myriad Demon Ridge's side, the master in the top 20 on the list glared at the Sacred Flame sect's steward and gritted his teeth as he shouted. Even if the sixth-order cultivator wasn't their match, they couldn't break the Heaven's secret contract. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Just as he finished speaking, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. Thick dark clouds appeared out of thin air and gathered above the golden light, covering the sky. The Heaven's secret had already begun to surge. The Myriad Demon Ridge's side was all shocked. The cultivators beside the Sacred Flame sect quickly retreated. In an instant, a large area around the Sacred Flame sect's people was emptied. The aura of death pressed down on them, but the group from the Sacred Flame sect remained calm. Disregarding everything else, just their courage to face the mysteries of the heavens was indeed admirable. However, this could not change the fact that they were about to die. Blazing Sacred Flame, burn my body. As long as the fire in my heart is not extinguished, I will not fear death. On the Sacred Flame sect's side, the steward with the highest cultivation lowered his head and chanted softly. On the ring, the seventh-order female cultivator also lowered her head and chanted, "Blazing Sacred Flame, burn my body. As long as the fire in my heart is not extinguished, I will not fear death." As she chanted, she raised her right thumb and pointed at a spot below her chest. Then, she pressed down hard. "This is..." Li Baxian suddenly realized something and his face changed slightly. *Poo*, there seemed to be a soft sound, like the sound of a balloon being punctured. Accompanied by this soft sound, the female cultivator's figure staggered slightly. At the same time, a violent wave of chi swept out in all directions with her as the center. The female cultivator groaned, and a trace of pain flashed across her eyes. At the same time, her aura suddenly weakened. "Destroy your own spirit aperture." Li Baxien gritted his teeth and shouted. Everyone who saw the female cultivator's actions, whether they were from Grand Heaven Alliance or Myriad Demon Ridge, all changed their expressions. Destroying one's own spirit aperture was easy to say, but difficult to do. Once one's spirit aperture was destroyed, one's future was destined to be hopeless and would be stuck in the spirit stream realm. Just looking at Li Baxien, one could see how amazing he was. Even the North Profound Sword Sect's sword master admired him. However, with his spirit aperture destroyed, he had been stuck in the spirit stream realm for more than 10 years. Moreover, his cultivation had stopped at the 8th order because one of his spirit apertures was destroyed, making it difficult for him to form the last minor heavenly cycle and advance to the 9th order. Of course, a destroyed spirit aperture could be repaired, but the price to pay was too great. No one was willing to try it easily. At this moment, in front of thousands of cultivators from both sides, this female cultivator from the Sacred Flame sect destroyed one of her spirit apertures without batting an eyelid. It was as if she was pulling off a strand of hair. This decisiveness and ruthlessness towards herself made the thousands of cultivators' scalps go numb. As expected of a madwoman from the Sacred Flame sect, she could actually do such a thing. After a brief moment of shock, everyone raised their heads to look at the surging crisis in the sky. Originally, when this female cultivator stood on the stage, the heavenly mystery began to surge rapidly, as if it was about to punish her. The thunder and lightning in the thick dark clouds made people's hearts palpitate. However, when the female cultivator destroyed one of her spirit apertures and her cultivation fell to the 6th order, the dark clouds above the golden light quickly dissipated. The surging heavenly mystery also dissipated completely. Under the sunlight, the blue sky was clear. The Myriad Demon Ridge side was beaming with joy. Chapter 167. Good! A loud shout rang out. It was the Myriad Demon Ridge Master, who was ranked in the top 20 of the Spirit Stream list. When the female cultivator stood on the stage, he also thought that the Sacred Flame sect's lunatics had lost their minds and wanted to challenge Heaven's secret. Who would have thought that they would cripple their own spirit apertures? This was undoubtedly a loophole in the Heaven's secret contract, but judging from Heaven's secret's reaction, this loophole left everyone speechless. After crippling one of her spirit apertures, the female cultivator fell from the 7th order realm to the 6th order realm. Naturally, it was in line with the Heaven's secret contract. Now that Heaven's secret had retreated, even if the Grand Heaven Alliance had a bellyful of complaints, they had nowhere to vent. A 6th order realm cultivator, who had just fallen from the 7th order realm, was naturally stronger than an ordinary 6th order realm cultivator. This was the last hope of the Myriad Demon Ridge. Hong, just as the Myriad Demon Ridge Master finished his sentence, Lu Yi, wrapped in blood qi, pounced towards the female cultivator from the Sacred Flame sect with murderous intent as usual. He had killed a 6th order realm cultivator who had fallen from the 7th order realm when he had just advanced to the 5th order realm. Although he wasn't in his best condition at the moment and didn't even know what was going on, since the female cultivator stood on the stage in front of him, then, he would kill her. The distance of 20 meters was quickly closed. Lu Ye's figure was like a mad beast, bringing with it a strong oppressive aura. His bloodshot eyes were clear, reflecting the figure of the female cultivator in front of him. 10 meters, 5 meters. Fire-red spirit energy began to climb on the long saber. Even if Lu Ye's spirit energy wasn't as pure as before, and even if his spirit artifact was broken, the sharpness spirit inscriptions still made the saber invincible. The female cultivator from the Sacred Flame sect didn't dodge because she knew that she couldn't beat Lu Yi in speed. She was willing to cripple her own spirit aperture to fight with Lu Yi, so she naturally had a way to deal with him. She raised her hands and her spirit energy surged. A heart-shaped pendant on her chest floated up and released a fiery red light. As she poured her spirit energy into the pendant, a layer of protection suddenly spread out and wrapped around her. The barrier was fiery red in color, as if lava was constantly flowing on it. It covered the woman's figure. When it appeared, the temperature of the entire golden light summit rose rapidly. The ground that was originally dyed red with blood was roasted dry, emitting an unpleasant smell. Molten core! Someone from the Grand Heaven Alliance exclaimed as he recognized the origin of the pendant. This was a defensive spiritual artifact unique to the Sacred Flame sect. Only 5 of them could be forged in each generation, and only their holy sons or holy daughters were qualified to possess them. It had an extremely strong defensive ability. In a battle between opponents of the same level, it could be said that as long as the wearer's spiritual power was not depleted, the defensive spiritual artifact would not be broken, unless the difference in strength was too great and the layer of protection was broken in one go. However, when faced with an enemy whose strength was too great, any defensive spiritual artifact would be useless. Being able to possess the molten core meant that this female cultivator was the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect. The group of cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance cursed in their heart. The people from the Sacred Flame sect were indeed lunatic. A holy daughter was actually willing to destroy her own spiritual acupoints and lower her own cultivation in order to win a battle. At this moment, Lu Yi had already rushed to the layer of protection. The scorching heat hit him in the face, drying his mouth and tongue. He did not care and slashed down with his saber. In the previous battles, it was not that no one had taken out a defensive spiritual artifact, but those defensive spiritual artifacts were usually not of much use and would be broken by him with a few slashes. However, this time, when he slashed at the fiery red barrier, he immediately felt the difference. The barrier was not hard, but it gave off an extremely tough feeling. When he slashed with his saber that was enhanced with sharpness, it was as if he had slashed at a piece of rubber. Without hesitation, he slashed a second time, then a third time, a fourth time. The hand holding the saber was already burned, but Lu Yi did not seem to feel it. Under thousands of gazes, he slashed wildly. Oh no! Li Baxian's face was solemn. Although he could not see what the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect was doing behind the barrier, he was sure that she was preparing a powerful and wide-range spell technique. The tragic deaths of the Dharma cultivators who fought Lu Yi made the myriad Devil Ridge understand one thing. In this arena, it was very difficult for Dharma cultivators to pose any threat to Lu Yi. This was because Lu Yi had a defensive spirit pattern that could be activated at will. The defensive power of this spirit pattern was extremely outstanding, and he could easily block every spell attack. If the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect really fought against Lu Yi like those Dharma cultivators before, even if she fell from the 7th order, she would not be able to last long. There was only one way to win against Lu Yi by relying on spell techniques, and that was to use a wide-range spell technique so that Lu Ye's defensive spirit inscription could not defend against it. An ordinary 7th order cultivator was not qualified to cultivate a spell technique of this scale. One needed to be at least in the 9th order to do so, but this was the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect, so her talent was definitely extraordinary. That was why she directly urged the defensive power of the Kiln Fire Core to ensure that her spell technique would not be disturbed. In the arena, Lu Yi also vaguely noticed this, so the speed at which he swung his saber increased a lot. At the same time, inside the flame barrier, the holy daughter of the Sacred Flame sect, who had a calm expression even after destroying her spirit acupoints, had a slight change in her expression, because she felt the spirit qi in her body rapidly decreasing, which caused a ripple in her tranquil state of mind. She was secretly surprised by the strength of her opponent's attack. One had to know that although the Kiln Fire Core's defensive power was excellent, its drawbacks were also obvious, and that was the huge consumption. This kind of consumption was linked to her spirit qi. It wasn't that this layer of defense could not be broken, but that it was frantically repairing itself while being attacked, and the power to repair itself came from her spirit qi. The stronger the attack, the faster her spirit chi would be consumed. She had once fought against a 7th Order cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance, and the other party's attack on the Kiln Fire Core didn't consume her spirit chi as fast as this. Every time her opponent slashed out, a portion of her spirit chi would disappear out of thin air. After a few slashes, 10% of her spirit chi would be gone. That broken saber was really sharp. Fortunately, she wasn't prepared to fight a protracted battle with Lu Yi. She only used one spirit technique to deal with him. Her spirit chi reserves continued to decrease, and in just 10 breaths, she only had 60% of her spirit chi left. Victory and defeat had been decided. She gently exhaled and gently pushed her hands outwards. Following this action, a scorching and violent aura suddenly spread out. The remaining 60% of spiritual energy in her body was like a flood that had broken through a dam, crazily flowing out. At the same time, outside the magma-like barrier, Lu Yi was rapidly retreating. From the very beginning, a strong sense of crisis had surged in his heart, as if there was a voice screaming in his ears, telling him to hurry and retreat or he would die. Almost at the moment he retreated, the barrier in front of him was broken. It wasn't broken by him, but by a violent force from the inside. A fiery red color instantly filled Lu Ye's field of vision, accompanied by an aura that seemed capable of burning all things. This aura embraced him and wrapped him up. The 200-meter-wide ring was filled with raging flames in an instant. These flames weren't ordinary flames, but instead more like diluted magma. This sudden change caused the cultivators watching the battle near the ring to quickly retreat. For a moment, no one could see what was happening inside the ring. But it was undeniable that a 5th Order cultivator who was enveloped by such a spirit technique had no chance of surviving. Just as Li Baxian was about to move, Wei Yang grabbed him. "Don't be impulsive, little junior brother isn't dead." Although she couldn't see the situation inside the ring, she could feel that the aura of her little junior brother hadn't been extinguished yet. She was extremely sensitive to the aura of life, so as long as it wasn't extinguished, she could save him. But at this time, if Li Baxian rushed out, although he could snatch her little junior brother back, the situation would not be optimistic. Hearing Wei Yang's words, Li Baxian resisted the urge to act. The scorching heat on the ring slowly dissipated, and the originally muddy golden dome had been burned dry at this moment, with some glass-like crystals even forming. The hazy situation began to become clear. On one side of the ring, the sacred flame sect saintess face was pale without a trace of blood, and there was even blood flowing out of her 7 orifices. Her aura was extremely weak, as if she could collapse at any moment. Her consumption was too great. The Kiln Fire Core's protection had consumed 30 to 40% of her spiritual energy, and that large-scale spirit technique had almost drained her dry. Strictly speaking, that spirit technique wasn't something a cultivator of her level should be able to use. She couldn't control it perfectly, and there was a great possibility that it would backfire on her, but in order to deal with Lu Yi, she had no other choice. Fortunately, her willpower was strong enough to barely complete that spirit technique, but because of this, she was like a lamp that had run out of oil. The backlash she suffered wasn't great, but it still caused her serious injuries. At this moment, her spirit acupoints were being burned by the sacred flame, and if she didn't receive timely treatment, even if she didn't die, she would become a cripple. She raised her listless eyes and looked forward, wanting to see what happened to her opponent. In the twisting heat wave, a figure emitting heat from his entire body brazenly rushed out. His naked upper body was covered in festering burns, and even his hair was burned into a mess. The clothes on his lower body were the same, clinging to his flesh. With every step he took, a bright red footprint appeared on the ground, and under the high temperature, the blood quickly dried up. The sacred flame sect saintess expression finally changed. He wasn't dead. How could he not be dead? Her opponent did have defensive spirit runes, but even if he did, he shouldn't have been able to block her spirit technique. As long as he was still in the ring, he would undoubtedly die. At this moment, the Saintess almost suspected that someone had secretly helped Lu Yi. But since the experts on her side didn't say anything, it meant that this possibility wasn't high. The enemy wasn't dead, and he was still rushing towards her. Although he wasn't fast and his figure was staggering, the distance between them was rapidly shrinking. She could foresee that when he rushed in front of her, it would be the time of her death. Chapter 168. The Sacred Flame Sect Saintess clenched her teeth and stretched out her small hand. She pushed the little remaining spirit energy in her body, and a red light immediately appeared on her palm. It was the convergence of her spirit energy. When this ball of red light appeared, the power of the large area of effect spell from before quickly gathered. The temperature of the scorching golden light dropped sharply. In the blink of an eye, a humanoid figure made purely of flames appeared in front of her. Fire Giant! Exclamations came from Grand Heaven Alliance's side. This was clearly the name of the spell cast by the Sacred Flame Sect Saintess. This was also a spell that shouldn't be cast by a 7th Order cultivator, which showed how high the Saintess' talent was. However, perhaps because her cultivation wasn't enough, the Fire Giant, which should have been majestic and at least several meters tall, was now only the size of an ordinary person. This Fire Giant didn't have legs, and the lower half of its body was purely made of flowing flames. Even its facial features weren't clear, but its figure was very burly. As soon as it appeared, it stood in front of the Saintess. After casting this spell, the Sacred Flame Sect Saintess knelt on the ground with a thud. This time, she was truly a lamp that had run out of oil. It had to be said that she was a smart woman. At the last moment, she used the last of her spiritual power to summon a fire giant instead of using a spell like the Fire Serpent technique, because spells could be easily dodged. Once Lu Yi dodged her last attack, she could only wait for death. Her mind felt like it was being pierced by needles, and the blood that flowed out from her 7 orifices had turned a dark red. Although she was kneeling on the arena stage, she still looked up at Lu Yi, her mind controlling the fire giant to meet him. When the heat wave hit, Lu Yi instinctively raised his broken saber and slashed. The reason why he was able to survive the attack of that spell was all thanks to the defensive spirit rune. When the power of that spell hit him, he activated a defensive spirit rune that could cover his whole body. This caused his already small amount of spiritual power to be almost completely depleted. Fortunately, his opponent's spell didn't last long, otherwise, he would have been burned to death. Right now, he could still activate the last spirit rune, which he left for his opponent, not this inexplicable thing in front of him. His vision was blood-red, and he couldn't see anything clearly. The Sacred Flame Sect Saintess was like a lamp that had run out of oil, and Lu Yi was also an arrow at the end of its flight. Around the arena, the masters from both camps watched this final battle with dignified expressions. No one had expected that a fight between trivial 5th or 6th Order cultivators could be so fierce. At this moment, the two figures fighting in the ring looked extremely comical. This was because Lu Yi no longer had his previous fierceness and ferocity. Every slash of his blade seemed weak and powerless. Every step he took, he staggered as if he could fall at any moment. As for the fire giant, it was also a little dazed and slow to react. This was the reason why the Sacred Flame Sect's Saintess consciousness had started to blur. Although the fire giant was summoned by her power, it did not have any thoughts and needed her to control it. As a result, the battle in the arena looked like a fight between children. No one laughed because of this. They were only secretly shocked at the tenacity of the wills of both sides. The group of experts on the Spirit Stream list asked themselves if they could have done something like this when their cultivation bases were at the 5th or 6th level. If these two didn't die today, their names would surely appear on the Spirit Stream list. The childlike battle continued. It wasn't intense, but as time passed, the fire giant summoned by the spell began to become unstable. Even its size was slowly shrinking. The myriad demon ridge side became nervous. Now that they had reached this point, they couldn't afford to fall short. Burning sacred fire, burn my body. At first, it was only one person chanting, but soon, many sacred flame sect cultivators began chanting in unison. Their voices grew louder and louder. In the arena, the saintess, who was already unconscious, suddenly burst out with her last bit of strength. Blood flowed from her eyes. The fire giant fighting Lu Yi suddenly expanded and punched out. With a crash, the remaining half of the broken blade in Lu Ye's hand shattered, and he was sent flying by the punch, crashing to the ground. Along with him, the hope of Grand Heaven Alliance fell. After sending Lu Yi flying, the fire giant suddenly collapsed, turning into specks of light and disappearing. It had exhausted its strength. The saintess of the sacred flame sect gasped for breath and struggled to get up from the ground. Step by step, she walked toward Lu Yi, who was lying motionless on the ground. She softly chanted the teachings of the sacred flame sect, and her painful expression slowly calmed down. Li Baxian's expression became serious and nervous. Wei Yang also secretly urged her spirit force. At the same time, the powerhouses of the myriad Devil Ridge all stared at the two of them. If the two of them made any movements, they would be attacked by those powerhouses. At that moment, the atmosphere became extremely tense. In the arena, the saintess, who had walked halfway, slowly took out a long sword from her storage bag. Just this action seemed to have exhausted all her strength. It should be an ordinary sword, because it didn't have any spiritual light, but it was enough. She didn't have the strength to lift the sword, so she dragged it in front of Lu Yi. She wobbled a few times and slowly stood still. Looking down at her opponent, who was burned and covered in wounds, the saintess, who had never smiled since she started cultivating, revealed a smile. She wanted to say to her opponent, "I won." But when she opened her mouth, she couldn't even make a sound. She held the sword hilt with both hands and pointed the sword at Lu Ye's chest. She slowly raised it. The already tense atmosphere around the arena collapsed at this moment. Many people began to silently urge their spiritual power. Lu Yi, who was lying motionless on the ground, suddenly raised a hand. His palm was facing the woman standing beside him, as if he wanted to block the sword that was about to stab him. His dry and cracked lips moved, and a soft voice came out. "Fire, Phoenix." Phoenix, fire-red spiritual power surged in her palm. The smile on the saintess' face immediately froze. She used the last of her strength to stab down with the sword in her hand. With a flapping sound, a fire bird as fat as a quail flew out and crashed into the saintess' chest, exploding with a loud bang. With a scream, the saintess was sent flying. Her chest was scorched, and she fell to the ground without a sound. Everyone was shocked speechless by this sudden change. The side that was supposed to be dead for sure still had the strength to counterattack, and it was a spell. In the final moment, the spiritual cultivator raised her sword and the weapon cultivator cast her spell. Victory and defeat had been decided. Life and death had been decided. Two figures rushed onto the arena at almost the same time. The sound of swords rang out. Li Baxian stood in front of Lu Yi. Behind him, hundreds of sword lights surged back and forth. Each sword light was a flying sword. Sword chi soared into the sky. The sword cultivator's killing intent rose. Anyone who dared to act rashly would be attacked by the hundreds of flying swords. Wei Yang held the badly mutilated Lu Yi in her arms and checked his injuries. Suddenly, a ferocious spiritual wave surged from behind the myriad demons' ridge. Countless people turned pale with fright. When they turned their heads to look back, they saw a figure that was dozens of feet tall slowly straightening its body. The figure was so huge that it covered the clouds and the sun. It was the figure of a cloud giant. It was a spell. In the entire Spirit Stream battlefield, there were no more than 3 people who could use the cloud giant's spell on such a scale. "Everyone, don't move. You'll die." A crisp voice came from the cloud giant. Only then did the people from the myriad demon ridge see the figure of a woman sitting on the shoulder of the cloud giant. The contrast between the small figure and the large cloud giant was very obvious, but no one dared to underestimate the figure. Because she was the spirit stream ranking leader, a monster who had occupied first place for more than 10 years. Feng Yuechan, a myriad demon ridge cultivator, gritted his teeth and shouted. No one knew when she had been hiding nearby. Previously, there was news that she was blocking the entrance of the 100 Refinements Valley's encampment. Now, it seemed that she had already escaped. After all, even if she was the spirit stream ranking leader, it was impossible for her to block a 4th-rank sect's encampment for so long. Senior brother, I'm here to help you. Feng Yuechan raised her hand and greeted Li Baxi enthusiastically. At this moment, Li Baxi didn't have the time to correct her. He nodded. Kill whoever dares to move. Okay. Feng Yuechan responded crisply. On the stage, Wei Yang had already fed Lu Yi a spirit pill and an unknown medicinal liquid to maintain his vitality. Lu Ye's lips squirmed, but Wei Yang didn't hear clearly. She moved her ear closer and whispered, Little junior brother, what did you say? Are you done? Lu Yi asked with difficulty. Yes. Wei Yang nodded. Lu Yi couldn't open one eye, and his other eye was only a slit. He wanted to laugh, but he couldn't. His tense mind relaxed, and his head tilted to the side as he fainted. Wei Yang panicked and hurriedly checked him. After confirming that Lu Yi was just too tired, she relaxed and looked at Li Baxian's back. Return to the sect. Li Baxian called out, Yuechan, send senior sister and little junior brother to Azure Sea Mountain. Yes. Feng Yuechan responded. The several hundred feet tall cloud giant bent down and reached out a hand towards the stage. Under the giant's shadow, the cultivators of Myriad Devil Ridge scattered like birds and beasts. The giant hand fell beside the stage, and Wei Yang jumped up with Lu Yi in her arms. After gently putting Lu Yi down, she suddenly felt something beside her. Turning her head, she found that it was a large snow-white tiger. She knew that this was Lu Ye's pet beast. Seeing the worry in the tiger's eyes, she comforted, Don't worry, with me here, he won't die. The cloud giant raised its hand and gently held the 2 people and 1 tiger in its palm. Then, under Feng Yuechan's control, it turned around and rushed towards Azure Sea Mountain's encampment. Its speed was incredibly fast. Fellow Taoists of the Myriad Devil Ridge, please wait here for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. After that, you can do whatever you want. However, if you act rashly before then, don't blame me, Li Baxian, for killing you. Li Baxian's voice faintly sounded, but the 100 flying swords behind him told all the cultivators of Myriad Devil Ridge that this guy wasn't joking. Yan Xing, who had been staring at Li Baxian, had a serious expression. Only today did he discover that Li Baxian's imperial sword technique had reached such a terrifying level. When they fought before, this guy didn't even use his full strength. Chapter 169. The grand battle on Golden Light Summit came to an end. Under the witness of thousands of cultivators from both camps, Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi, a 5th-order spirit stream realm cultivator, had fought 43 battles with the Myriad Demon Ridge. He had not lost a single battle, and in the final battle, he had killed a Sacred Flame Sect Saintess who had destroyed her own spirit aperture, causing her cultivation to drop from the 7th Order. The news quickly spread to the entire spirit stream battlefield through various channels, and even to the 9 State. The entire world was shocked. A trivial 5th Order spirit stream realm cultivator was nothing in the eyes of the great masters. But what this 5th Order Spirit Stream Realm cultivator had done made them take him seriously. The good news was that although Lu Yi won in the end, he was seriously injured and on the verge of death. No one knew if he could escape this calamity. In the Tsangming Mountain, Elder Tang, who had been waiting in the main sect of the Tsangming Mountain, was stunned when he heard this news. Thinking back to the disheveled kid who had just opened the first aperture half a year ago and comparing all the feats he had done, he almost suspected that they were the same person. A fifth-order spirit stream realm cultivator in half a year was already exaggerated enough, but there were always some fortuitous encounters that could explain it. In the spirit stream battlefield, there were many fortuitous encounters. But killing so many sixth-order spirit stream realm cultivators as a fifth-order spirit stream realm cultivator was somewhat inconceivable. When Elder Tang took in that little brat, he did not see such great potential in him. But it had to be said that the battle on Golden Light Summit had pushed the Jade Blood sect of the War Province, which had been silent for several decades, to the forefront of the storm once again. The Myriad Demon Ridge side thought that this banner would fall immediately, but now it seemed like it was about to rise from the ashes. How could this be? So, less than 2 hours after the news of the battle on Golden Light Summit spread, many Myriad Demon Ridge sects passed down an order to their disciples. If Lu Ye did not survive, then Jade Blood sect was destined to be wiped out. But if he survived this calamity, then if they met in the Spirit Stream battlefield in the future, under the premise that the battlefield rules allowed, they were to eliminate him by any means necessary. Such a character had to be eliminated as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be difficult to deal with him once he grew. The Myriad Demon Ridge side had suffered a similar loss several decades ago, so they would not repeat the same mistake. Force Prefecture, Pilheart Sect Headquarters. As a second-grade sect, the Pilheart sect's heritage was no doubt extremely powerful. Decades ago, it even had hopes of reaching the first grade. However, due to a huge battle, the sect suffered heavy losses, causing its grade to plummet. It was only a few years ago that it barely recovered. At that moment, many members of the upper echelons were gathered in the Pilheart sect's meeting hall. Most of them had their eyes closed and were silent. Only a middle-aged man was recounting the events of the battle at Golden Light Dome. He was Yu Guanjia, a deputy sect master of the Pilheart sect. He held great authority and was a divine sea realm cultivator. His tone was calm and he spoke objectively. In a few simple sentences, he recounted the entire sequence of events. Everyone present had their own channels of communication, so even though they couldn't enter the Spirit Stream battlefield as they pleased, they had all heard about the huge commotion that had occurred on the Golden Light Summit. After Yu Guanjia finished speaking, he continued, "In the battle at Golden Light Dome, our sect has 2 disciples that participated. One of them is Li Baxian and the other is Feng Yuechan. These 2 disciples are the guardian and deputy guardian of our sect's encampment at the Spirit Stream battlefield. They left their encampment without any orders, disregarding our sect's foundation and violating the sect's rules. Sect Master is currently in seclusion, so please come up with a plan to deal with this matter." An elder said with a frown, "The guardian and deputy guardian leaving their encampment together is too vile. If other enemy sects were to take the opportunity to invade, wouldn't our Pilheart sect's centuries of hard work be for naught? If the other disciples are the same as them, what future does our Pilheart sect have? They need to be severely punished." Immediately, several people echoed him. Someone else said, "This matter concerns the Jade Blood sect, yet that Li Baxian is so impatient. It seems that he is still immature. As for Feng Yuechan," as he spoke, he raised his head and glanced at a dignified woman opposite him. "I watched Yuechan grow up. The little girl is obedient and sensible, and won't make any mistakes. She was probably bewitched by that Li Baxian. That's right, Yuechan is the most obedient. Moreover, no one has dared to invade our sect's encampment for more than a decade. Yuechan has also contributed greatly, so it's inevitable for children to make small mistakes occasionally. However, she has still violated the sect's rules. How about this? Order her to immediately enter seclusion and advance to the Cloud River tier as soon as possible. She has been in the Spirit Stream tier for far too long." "Very well. As for Li Baxian, tell him to return to the sect immediately and report his duties without delay. As for his subsequent punishment, we will decide based on his attitude." The few of them spoke one after another, clearly arranging for the two disciples who had violated the sex rules. However, the difference in treatment between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. Feng Yuechan was protected, while Li Baxi was treated like the child of a stepmother, unloved by his grandmother and unloved by his uncle. Yu Guanjia turned to look at the dignified woman. "What do you think, junior sister Chiu?" The woman stood up, crossed her arms in front of her chest, and strode out of the main hall, not saying a single word from beginning to end. Yu Guanjia hurriedly said to everyone, "You can discuss the remaining matters among yourselves." He strode out in pursuit. A moment later, he flew side by side with junior sister Chiu in midair, and said with a worried expression, "Junior sister, don't be angry. The sect master has gone into seclusion, and as the sect's sealing envoy, I am responsible for the matters of the spirit stream battlefield. Li Baxi and Yuechan have violated the sect's rules, and I cannot turn a blind eye to it. Of these two children, one is your biological child, and although you have watched the other grow up, their seniority is still the same as yours and mine. You and I have both seen Yuechan's feelings for Li Baxi. There is a difference in seniority between the two, so how can they live peacefully? Why don't we take this opportunity to separate them? You are Yuechan's mother, so why don't you persuade Yuechan to advance to the Cloud River tier as soon as possible? If she continues to stay in the Spirit Stream tier, it will not be good for her future. Our Pill Heart sect will also lose a pillar of support in the future." Junior Sister Chiu stopped, turned to look at Yu Guanjia, and said indifferently, "Seniority? I remember that senior brother took in a new concubine half a year ago. Based on seniority, it wouldn't be too much for that little girl to call you grandfather, right?" Yu Guanjia's face turned red. "How can this be compared?" The woman's expression turned cold. "The sect master is not here, so you have the final say in the matters of the sect. I don't care what you do, but if I find out that anyone dares to secretly harm Li Baxi, don't blame me for disregarding the friendship between fellow disciples." After saying this, she left with a flick of her sleeves. Yu Guanjia calmly looked at her back as she left. His hands clenched under his sleeves, and his expression gradually turned cold. An hour later, the Pill Heart sect sent out an order, ordering the garrison's vice-envoy Li Baxi to return to the sect immediately without delay. However, news quickly spread that Li Baxi was currently locked in a fierce battle with Yan Xing, who was ranked second on the Spirit Stream tier. He was completely unable to free himself. On the other side, a group of Cloud River tier cultivators from the Vitality sect had nothing to do, so they gathered to gamble. The chubby Pang Daohai was the banker, and a group of fellow disciples who were passionate about gambling placed their bets everywhere. The table was filled with shiny spirit stones. Most of them were piled up in front of Pang Daohai. Looking at his happy expression, it was obvious that he had won a lot. He suddenly turned his head to look at a cultivator with a mustache. "Senior brother Lushan, something big happened at the Spirit Stream battlefield a few days ago. Have you heard about it?" Lushan was only focused on the cards in his hand and did not care about anything else. He casually replied, "What big thing could happen at the Spirit Stream battlefield?" Pang Daohai then told them about the battle at the Golden Light Summit. The group of Cloud River tier cultivators who had been gambling here for a few days were all stunned and exclaimed in surprise. Pang Daohai chuckled. "It's interesting. Senior brother Lushan should know that fifth order brat." Lushan raised his eyebrows. "I know him? Who?" "Half a year ago, in Evil Moon Valley. The one who was taken in by Elder Tang of the Jade Blood sect." Lushan thought for a moment and was very surprised. "That Lu Ye? That's him. That's impossible, right?" Lushan frowned. "Did you get the wrong person?" He still had some impression of the little guy called Lu Ye. After all, he was taken under Elder Tang's tutelage. Moreover, he had the talent of Ye. Lu Ye's nickname was spread by him. But how was that possible? A one-leaf cultivator, a fifth-order cultivator in half a year, and killed the challengers of the 43 sects of the Myriad Demon Ridge at the Golden Light Summit. He has been taken back to the Jade Blood sect. I don't know if he's dead or not, but as long as he's still breathing, with Senior Sister Shui Yuan's means, she can definitely save him. Pang Daohai looked at Lushan meaningfully. And that brat seems to care a lot about the name Luya. I heard that a guy from the Myriad Demon Ridge called him fellow cultivator Luya, but he was killed by him. With the potential this brat has shown now, when he reaches the Cloud River tier. Hee, senior brother Lushan, take care. Lushan's face turned ugly, but he sneered. What a joke, I'm afraid of him? He has to survive first. Show your cards, show your cards. Pang Daohai did not say anything else. Just as he was about to show his cards, a strong wave of spirit energy came from outside. Before he could show his cards, the roof was lifted. A group of Cloud River tier cultivators looked up, dumbfounded. They saw more than a dozen figures in midair surrounding the place. The leader was a true Lake tier martial uncle, who was looking at them with fire in his eyes. The Discipline Hall. Someone shouted, and the crowd scattered. The true Lake tier cultivator gritted his teeth. Openly gathering for gambling. The reputation of our Vitality sect has been ruined by you guys. Take them all down. A huge net fell from the sky, sealing the area. None of the gamblers who had gathered here managed to escape, and they were all firmly caught in the net. An hour later, screams came from the Discipline Hall one after another. They were extremely shrill. The cultivators of the Vitality sect who were passing by heard them, and they all trembled in fear. Some of the new disciples who had just joined the sect turned pale. The senior brothers who had been around for a long time reminded them, in the future, if you meet those fat fellows in the sect, you must stay away. They are the cancer of our Vitality sect. Don't let them lead you astray. The new disciples nodded their heads vigorously. Please wait patiently. The maintenance staff will correct the content of the chapter in 2 minutes. Chapter 170. Within the boundless darkness, a ripple began to appear. As the ripple spread, Luya's consciousness began to awaken. After an unknown amount of time, the darkness was torn apart and an indescribable pain and itchiness assaulted him. Luyi abruptly opened his eyes. He could vaguely make out 2 figures standing by his bed. One of them immediately sat down and raised his hand. Gentle spiritual energy flowed through his palm and into his body as he examined his condition. His vision was a bit blurry and he couldn't make out this person's appearance, but he was certain that it was a woman. There was another figure standing by his bed. Luyi glanced at it for a moment and felt that it was the sect master. He opened his mouth to call out, but as the gentle spiritual energy flowed into his body, his consciousness began to grow hazy again. He vaguely heard the sect master ask, "What's the situation?" An ethereal voice immediately sounded, "You're dead meat." The sect master's voice rang out, "You little girl, don't scare this old man." This old man finally. He couldn't hear anything else after that. The entire world quickly moved away from him, and he fell into a deep slumber once again. After an unknown amount of time, Luyi woke up once again. Someone was sitting next to him, using spiritual energy to treat his injuries. Compared to the last time he had woken up, Luyi felt much better. At the very least, his consciousness wasn't as hazy. His vision slowly cleared up and he saw that the person sitting next to him was a young woman. She had a pleasant appearance and a pair of clear eyes without any impurities. What surprised Luyi was that this woman's appearance was somewhat similar to his eldest senior sister, Wei Yang. If he really had to compare them, this woman was like an immature eldest senior sister. However, compared to her eldest senior sister's maturity, this woman was undoubtedly purer. "You're awake?" "You are." Luyi opened his mouth, his voice hoarse and his throat burning. The woman smiled gently. "I'm your second senior sister, Shui Yuan." So he didn't have a second senior brother, only a second senior sister. Luyi thought to himself, "Where is this?" Lu Yi wanted to turn his head to look at his surroundings but was shocked to find that he couldn't move his neck. "This is the Blue Blood sect," the second senior sister replied. "Little junior brother, you've already returned home." Returned home? Had he already achieved the goal he had set since entering the Spirit Stream battlefield? Lu Ye's heart relaxed, but he immediately thought of Yi and Hupo. "Where are my mounts?" He was certain that Yi and Hupo were not by his side, or else they would have been guarding him. "It's temporarily staying in Mount Songmin's encampment. You haven't established a contract with it, so it can't return to the 9 provinces with you. However, I've already arranged for it to be sent to my sect's encampment. When your injuries have recovered, you can go and find it." Lu Yi didn't know what kind of contract he was going to make with Hupo, but he knew that there were certain conditions that had to be met in order to travel between the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Kingdom of the 9 States. He wasn't in a rush for the time being. Hupo had Yi with him, and there shouldn't be any danger at the Jade Blood sect's encampment. Only now did Lu Yi have the time to check his own condition. His spiritual power had long since dried up. He had encountered this situation once before, so he did not panic. As long as his body recovered, his spiritual power would naturally recover. His injuries should be very serious because he realized that he had been wrapped up like a dumpling. Other than his eyes, nose, and mouth, there was not a single gap left. Following his second senior sister Shui Yuan's actions, he was currently wrapped in a kind of spiritual power that was as gentle as water. His entire body was filled with a mixture of pain and itchiness. It was similar to the situation when Hua Si had treated him, but Hua Si had used a wood-type spiritual power, while his second senior sister had used a water-type spiritual power. These 2 types of spiritual power contained a huge amount of vitality and were extremely beneficial for healing injuries. Lu Yi understood that his second senior sister was a medical cultivator, just like Hua Si. He didn't see his eldest senior sister and 4th senior brother, nor did he see his 3rd senior brother, who he had never seen before. Even the sect master was nowhere to be seen. 2 hours later, his second senior sister withdrew her spiritual power and warned Lu Yi, "Don't move around. If there's anything, call me. I'll be outside." "Yes," Lu Yi responded softly. Shui Yuan got up and walked out. After closing the door, she thought for a moment and raised her hand to tap on the battlefield imprint to send out a message. "I've saved him." At the same time, in the cloud region that bordered the military region, which was considered the territory of the Myriad Devil Ridge, Tang Yifeng's figure floated in midair. The violent spiritual power fluctuations slowly subsided. Below him, a sect of the Myriad Devil Ridge had been razed to the ground. This Myriad Devil Ridge force called White Wolf City was almost wiped out. In the ruins, countless cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge lay dead. White Wolf City was only a 6th-grade force. The strongest cultivator in the sect was only at the True Lake Realm, and there weren't many of them. In the face of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator like the sect master, they naturally didn't have the power to fight back. The sect wasn't wiped out because the Spirit Stream Realm and Cloud River Realm cultivators hid in the battlefield when they saw that the situation wasn't good. However, after this battle, White Wolf City's rank would most likely drop in the sect's assessment. Suddenly, a stream of light swept over from afar. Before it got close, it shouted, "Tang Yifeng, you're courting death." The sect master didn't say a word. He turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the person. In an instant, the 2 figures were locked in a fierce battle. The more the person fought, the more frightened he became. The strength displayed by Tang Yifeng was far beyond the understanding of the Myriad Devil Ridge. After just a short fight, he knew that he was no match for Tang Yifeng and hurriedly fled. The sect master looked in the direction that the person fled and chose not to pursue. Although he could kill the person, it would definitely take a lot of time. The cloud region was under the control of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Besides that person, there must be other divine sea realm cultivators on the way. He immediately flew in a direction. On the same day, the 3 sects of the myriad Devil Ridge in the Cloud region were attacked by the sect master of the Jade Blood sect, Tang Yifeng. All of them suffered heavy losses, especially the White Wolf City. The entire sect's true Lake Realm cultivators were slaughtered, and more than half of the Cloud River Realm cultivators were killed or injured. The disaster caused by an enraged spell cultivator was extremely terrifying, especially when this spell cultivator was at the Divine Sea Realm. The myriad Devil Ridge dispatched more than a dozen Divine Sea Realm cultivators to surround and intercept Tang Yifeng. The two sides fought for half a day, and Tang Yifeng escaped with heavy injuries. But before he left, he said something. If anyone dared to disregard the rules and attack the disciples of the Jade Blood sect, then don't blame him for not caring about his reputation and bullying the weak. It was only a few days after the battle at the Golden Light Summit, and such a thing happened. Obviously, Tang Yifeng was standing up for his disciples. The 3 sects of the Cloud region that were attacked by him all had disciples who participated in the battle at the Golden Light Summit. The ferocious beast that had been silent for many years finally showed its fangs. For a moment, many sects of the myriad Devil Ridge were worried. In the room, Lu Yi sat cross-legged. He had to admit that his second senior sister's medical skills were really amazing. He had suffered such heavy injuries before, but after being treated by second senior sister for 2 days, he felt much better. Although he was still wrapped up like a dumpling, it was obvious that he was getting better quickly. Second senior sister would also feed him some strange medicine, but compared to the disgusting bitter medicine concocted by that black-hearted woman, Hua Si, the medicine concocted by second senior sister tasted much better. At the moment, he was recovering his spiritual energy. After swallowing a panacea and refining the medicinal effect, he activated his cultivation method. Then, he added spirit-gathering spiritual tattoos to his spiritual cavities. Then, he found something that gave him a headache. His spiritual energy was very heterogeneous. Even if he recovered his spiritual energy, it was still heterogeneous, and the situation was more serious than before. There was no way around it. During the battle at the Golden Light Summit, he had swallowed too many panacea to recover. Even if the quality of those panacea was good, it was inevitable that a large amount of elixir toxins had accumulated in his body. If he wanted to solve this problem, he had to let the talent tree recover its ability to burn elixir toxins. Lu Yi had some ideas on how to do that, but he was not in a hurry. Healing was more important. Moreover, he had to go to the place to take Hupu out. He should be very worried about him. Bang. The door was kicked open, and Lu Yi jumped in fright. He looked up and saw a large bed walk in. Behind the bed was the petite figure of his second senior sister. After getting along with her for a few days, Lu Yi understood that his second senior sister was a genuinely gentle woman. She was not like Hua Si, who looked gentle on the surface but was actually two-faced. In the past few days, her care for him could be said to be meticulous, almost treating him like a child. Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Therefore, he didn't know what second senior sister had encountered. She looked a little angry and even moved a bed over. Second senior sister, this is... She couldn't be here to take care of him, right? Second senior sister smiled sweetly at Lu Yi and said in a gentle voice, "It's none of your business. Have a good rest." Second senior sister threw the bed to the side and took out a bedding from somewhere. After arranging it properly, she turned to look at the door and said in a cold voice, "Why are you still hiding and not coming in? Is there something to be embarrassed about?" Only then did Lu Yi realize that there was someone outside the door. Looking up, he couldn't see anyone and looked at Shui Yuan in confusion. Shui Yuan snorted, "If you don't come in, I'll go invite him in." Cough. A light cough came from outside the door. "You wicked disciple, is this how you speak to your master in front of your junior brother?" Following this voice, the figure of an elderly man walked in from outside, his expression dignified as he stroked his beard. Who else could it be but the sect master? Lu Ye's eyes lit up and he hurriedly tried to get up, but as soon as he got up, he almost fell down. The sect master stepped forward and supported him. Their eyes met and Lu Yi could clearly see the guilt in the sect master's eyes. The old man's mouth squirmed twice, his thousands of words condensing into a single sentence, "I've made you suffer." He really didn't expect that after accepting Lu Yi as his disciple, so many things would happen. In the end, this was the legacy of Blue Blood sect. It didn't make sense for a disciple who had never even entered the sect to bear the burden, much less almost lose his life. In the past 6 months, although he was certain that Lu Yi was still alive, he didn't have enough manpower to search for Lu Ye's traces on a large scale. He had asked Shui Yuan to come forward and ask some trustworthy rogue cultivators, but their strength wasn't high. Wanting to find someone in the vast spirit stream battlefield was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Momo reminds you, after reading, please save it. It will be more convenient to read it again. After you submit it, the maintenance staff will correct the content of the chapter within 2 minutes. Please wait patiently. Chapter 171. The sect master did not know what Lu Yi had encountered in the spirit stream battlefield over the past 6 months, but when Shui Yuan had helped him bandage his wounds, he had seen it with his own eyes. The body of a 16 or 17-year-old boy was covered in old and new wounds, several of which were extremely fatal. It was easy to imagine what kind of hardships he had encountered in the spirit stream battlefield. Allowing an innocent and ignorant boy to suffer such hardships was his dereliction of duty and Blue Blood sect's responsibility, so after bringing Lu Yi back to the sect, he had immediately charged into Cloud Province. He wanted to ensure that there would be no more unfair incidents like the Battle of Golden Light Peak in the future. He wanted to let those old farts of Myriad Demon Ridge know that Blue Blood sect still had him as a shield and that before he fell, his disciples could not be humiliated. For this reason, he did not hesitate to expose the cultivation he had hidden for decades. Inside the room, the sect master patted Lu Ye's shoulder and smiled. "It's rare for you to find your way back. First heal your wounds." Lu Yi respectfully responded, "Yes." His heart was filled with curiosity. Why did the sect master look like he had been beaten up by someone with a bloody nose and a swollen face? He suddenly understood why his second senior sister had moved another bed here. "Senior, do you want to come here on your own or do you want me to help you?" Shui Yuan suddenly asked. The sect master straightened up and smiled lightly. "It's just a minor injury, there's no need to waste so much effort." "Wah, sect master." Lu Yi was shocked as he watched the sect master spit out a large mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. The sect master smiled at him. "Don't worry, it's just some blood clots, once I spit it out." "Wah." Shui Yuan hurriedly rushed over and helped the sect master lie down on the bed. After some work, she finally stabilized the sect master's injuries and complained with red eyes, "You're already so old yet you're still so stubborn. Sooner or later you'll die outside, and there won't even be anyone to collect your corpse." The sect master was scolded to the point of losing his temper, and could only lament in his heart that his disciples were unfilial. Lu Yi watched from the side, trembling with fear, suddenly discovering that his second senior sister did not seem to be so gentle. Second senior sister had just finished her work, and did not have time to wipe the sweat from her forehead when a voice called out from outside, "Old man, second senior sister, I'm back." Lu Yi heard the voice and replied, "Fourth senior brother?" Moments later, a figure as straight as a sword appeared at the door. It was Li Baxian. Their eyes met. Li Baxian grinned at Lu Yi, but then he fell to the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust. "Fourth senior brother!" Lu Yi exclaimed. Li Baxian crawled on the ground, raised his hand and gave Lu Yi a thumbs up. "Don't worry, I'm still okay." Shui Yuan, who had just settled the headmaster down, appeared in front of Li Baxin in a flash. She reached out to grab his collar and lifted him up. As she swept a glance over him, the expression in her eyes changed slightly. Such heavy injuries. Li Baxin smiled brightly at Shui Yuan. That bastard Yan Xing is even worse. I didn't embarrass the Blue Blood sect. After saying that, his head tilted to the side and he fainted. Shui Yuan began to get busy again. 2 hours later, Shui Yuan wiped the sweat off her forehead and looked at the 3 beds in front of her. She was deeply exhausted. A moment later, she suddenly smiled again. The Blue Blood sect had not been so lively for many years. Lu Yi spent the day in this strange atmosphere. There were 3 beds in the room. He was in the middle, the headmaster was on the right, and Li Baxin was on the left. Of the 4 people in the sect, 3 were lying down, leaving only Shui Yuan busy. 2 days later, there were 3 large barrels in the room. The barrels were steaming hot and filled with a dark green medicinal liquid. The headmaster, Li Baxin, and Lu Yi each soaked in a barrel, meditating to absorb the medicinal effects. This medicine was concocted by second senior sister and had a great effect on healing injuries. Yesterday, the bandages wrapped around Lu Ye's body were removed. As a result, he found that his hair was much shorter. Thinking back to the last battle, it should have been burned by the female cultivator of the Sacred Flame sect. Fortunately, he had not been burned bald, otherwise he would not have been able to see anyone. After being nursed by second senior sister, his external injuries were basically healed. After being in the same room for a few days and chatting with fourth senior brother and the headmaster, Lu Yi more or less understood the basic situation of the Blue Blood sect. In the entire Blue Blood sect, before he came, there were only the headmaster and second senior sister. Now that he was here, there were only 3 people in the entire sect. This could not be described as just a decline in talent and the decline of the sect. No wonder people said that the Blue Blood sect was on the verge of being abandoned. As for fourth senior brother Li Baxin, although he could be considered a disciple of the Blue Blood sect when he was young, he later transferred to Pill Heart sect. Third senior brother's situation was the same. In another sect, he was not a disciple of the Blue Blood sect in name, just a member of the Blue Blood sect. As for eldest senior sister Wei Yang, Lu Yi had not seen her since he woke up. When he asked fourth senior brother said mysteriously, "Eldest senior sister, she is the kind of person who comes and goes like a dragon. It will be very difficult for you to see her in the future, so don't worry too much." He did not specifically explain eldest senior sister's situation to Lu Yi, making him confused. He wanted to personally thank eldest senior sister. After all, at the critical moment on top of the golden light, eldest senior sister was the first to arrive and protect him. As for why he was targeted as a disciple of the Blue Blood sect, fourth senior brother also explained. Only then did Lu Yi know that a few decades ago, an extraordinary person had appeared in the Blue Blood sect. This person was their current generation's eldest senior brother, Feng Wujiang. Under the leadership of this eldest senior brother, the Blue Blood sect rose rapidly. The Blue Blood sect also became a symbol of the Grand Heaven Alliance, a banner. At that time, the Blue Blood sect raised its arm and called for help, and the Grand Heaven Alliance had many followers. It was unknown how many sects in the myriad Devil Ridge had been suppressed by the Blue Blood sect. Several first-grade sects were even killed and dropped several grades. The Sacred Flame sect was one of them. Therefore, this time, in order to kill Lu Yi, the Sacred Flame sect was even willing to cripple their own spiritual cavities. The boundless glory and praise seemed to have caused that eldest senior brother to gradually lose himself. He slowly became obstinate and self-opinionated. 30 years ago, in a war between the 2 factions, he did not listen to advice and led a large group of experts to attack a first-grade sect in the myriad Devil Ridge. In the end, he was ambushed. In that battle, Feng Wujiang died and the Grand Heaven Alliance suffered heavy losses. In that battle, the disciples of the Blue Blood sect were almost completely annihilated. It was also because of that battle that the Blue Blood sect gradually began to decline. Today, this symbol and banner that the Grand Heaven Alliance was once proud of was about to be removed. Those enemies who had been suppressed by the Blue Blood sect naturally did not want to see the Blue Blood sect continue to exist. Therefore, after Lu Ye's identity was exposed, it caused such a huge commotion. Therefore, this is the trouble caused by that eldest senior brother. Little junior brother, you just suffered a grudge that you shouldn't have. In the wooden barrel, Li Baxian was bare-chested. He raised his head and leaned against the side of the barrel. He held a wine gourd in his mouth and took a big gulp. That old man was useless. After eldest senior brother died, he couldn't hold the fort anymore. How old were you at that time? What did you know? The sect master's voice came from the other side. Blue Blood sect wasn't a strong sect to begin with. It was your eldest senior brother who single-handedly raised the sect. It can be said that he was the reason Blue Blood sect was able to become a first-grade sect. Now that he has fallen, the sect naturally has no foundation. Your eldest senior brother was indeed amazing, but the heavens were jealous of his talent and died too early, leaving behind a mess. Amazing! Li Baxian laughed. How does he compare to little junior brother? The sect master fell silent. This matter was incomparable. Although Feng Wujiang was amazing, he had never done anything so shocking when he was just a fifth-order cultivator. That disciple of his was a late bloomer. Before reaching the Cloud River realm, he was unknown, but after reaching the Cloud River realm, he suddenly displayed extraordinary talent. After that, he became unstoppable. At his peak, he even obtained the honor of being the Union Master of Grand Heaven Alliance. A moment later, the sect master suddenly said, "Yi, from now on, when you walk around the Spirit Stream battlefield, you must be careful. Although the Battle of Golden Light Peak made you famous, it will also make Myriad Demon Ridge even more wary. They won't be willing to see a second Feng Wujiang rise. If there is a chance, they will definitely try to get rid of you." Half a year ago, the headmaster had planned to send Lu Ye to another sect to cultivate, but now it was definitely impossible. After the Battle of Golden Light Summit, Lu Ye had been labeled as a member of the Blue Blood sect. Everyone now knew that the Blue Blood sect had a Lu Ye. Lu Ye opened his mouth, wanting to tell the sect master that his name was not Yi, but in the end, he didn't bother arguing and simply nodded. Yes. In his heart, Lu Ye swore, "Vitality Sex Lushan, you and I are irreconcilable." Li Baxian comforted, "But little junior brother, you don't have to worry too much. 2 days ago, the old man, and, with the old man here, something like this won't happen again. Even if Myriad Demon Ridge wants to target you, it will only be within the rules." Within the rules? In short, in the Spirit Stream battlefield, the matters of the Outer Circle will be handled by the people of the Outer Circle, and the matters of the Inner Circle will be handled by the people of the Inner Circle. No master from the Core Circle will run out to kill you, otherwise, if everyone does, not only will the Spirit Stream battlefield fall into chaos, the 9 province will also fall into chaos. Although Grand Heaven Alliance and Myriad Demon Ridge are like fire and water, in general, they still have to act according to the rules. This time, it was mainly because Myriad Demon Ridge was driven into a corner that you suffered such grievances. Lu Yi nodded, indicating that he understood. This was good news for him. With his current 5th order cultivation, he could still hang around in the Outer Circle for a while, but once his cultivation reached the 6th or 7th order, he would be able to enter the Inner Circle. Ping. The door was kicked open, and the dense fog surged. Second senior sister Shui Yuan's cold voice rang out. "Who's drinking?" Li Baxian froze and turned to look at Shui Yuan. "No. I didn't. You're so seriously injured yet you're still drinking? Didn't I tell you not to drink during this time? If you like to drink, then drink as much as you want." second senior sister arrived in front of Li Baxin in a few steps, rolled up her sleeves, and pressed her small hand towards his head, directly pushing him into the water. Golyalu, Lu Yi and the sect master looked at each other across a wooden barrel before slowly sliding their bodies into the water, leaving only their eyes exposed. They were trembling. Chapter 172. On the 7th day after returning to the sect, Lu Ye's injuries had mostly healed, showing just how good his second senior sister's medical skills were. Even the condition of his spirit qi had improved. The medicinal juices he soaked in and drank every day seemed to have the effect of purifying pill toxins. His second senior sister had obviously noticed the problem with his spirit qi and had specifically adjusted it. What Lu Yi praised the most was that his second senior sister could also cook delicious medicinal cuisines. Not only were they delicious, they even had some body-tempering effects. After recuperating for a few days, Lu Yi clearly felt that his vitality had increased by a notch. Now Lu Yi was the only new disciple in the Blue Blood sect, and he had suffered a great grievance because of the previous generation's grievances, so his second senior sister had given almost all her care and love to Lu Yi. Li Baxin, who had come to the Blue Blood sect to eat and heal, did not have this blessing. Every time he ate, he felt like he was being targeted. Although the Blue Blood sect was now in dire straits, it was still a first-grade sect a few decades ago. A starving camel was still bigger than a horse, so there were always some good things left in the sect. These things might not be of much use to cultivators, but to people like Lu Yi, whose cultivation was not high, they were of great help. Late in the morning, in the main guard peak, Soul Calming Hall, the Blue Blood sect covered a vast area and had over 100 spirit peaks, of which the main guard peak was only one. At its peak, each spirit peak had a large number of disciples, but now those spiritual peaks were all abandoned, and only the most central defensive peak was left. The sect master and second senior sister usually lived on the main guard peak. The Soul Calming Hall was also located on the main guard peak. Originally, there was a soul calming peak that housed the spirit tablets of the cultivators who had died since the sect was founded. At this moment, in the Soul Calming Hall, in front of the tens of thousands of spirit tablets, Lu Yi was kneeling while his second senior sister Shui Yuan and fourth senior brother Li Baxin stood to the side, their expressions solemn. The sect master lit 3 incense sticks in the censer at the front and respectfully bowed before saying, "Blue Blood sect's 10th sect master, Tang Yifeng, respectfully greets the ancestors. Today there is a person from the War Province, Lu Yi, with a simple and honest temperament, with a gentle temperament and good talent." He praised Lu Yi so much that Lu Ye's expression became a little unnatural. "Today I accept Lu Yi as my disciple. I hope that the ancestors will protect him and keep him safe." Turning around to face Lu Yi, the sect master's expression was solemn as he said, "Lu Yi, from today onwards, you are an official disciple of Blue Blood sect, sharing the sect's glory and disgrace. In the future, when you act outside, you are not allowed to do anything that brings shame to the sect. I hope you can." Speaking up to here, the sect master's voice paused for a moment before he gently stroked Lu Ye's head. "Grow up safely." Originally, there would have been some grand rhetoric, but the Blue Blood sect only had 3 people in total, so there was no point in boasting. Moreover, after the battle at Golden Light Peak, Lu Ye's situation would not be too good in the future, so the sect master only had one wish. If Lu Yi could be safe, yes. Lu Yi bowed respectfully. Although half a year ago, on the way back to the sect master had respectfully asked Tianji to bear witness and accept Lu Yi as an official disciple of Blue Blood sect, that was only a temporary measure. Now that this process had been completed, Lu Yi could be considered a true disciple of Blue Blood sect. Sweeping his eyes over the tens of thousands of memorial tablets, Lu Yi felt as if he could see all the sect's ancestors staring at him. Lu Yi slowly got up, and since coming to this world, his soul, which had been completely helpless, finally felt a sense of belonging. From now on, I am also a member of a sect. Congratulations, little junior brother, Li Baxian smiled from the side. Fourth senior brother. Lu Yi respectfully bowed. This bow was not only out of gratitude for Li Baxian's desperate efforts to protect him, but also out of respect for his fellow senior brother. Second senior sister. Lu Yi bowed to Shui Yuan again. Shui Yuan's eyes were slightly red. Unlike Li Baxian, when Blue Blood sect had declined, Li Baxian had still been a child and didn't understand anything, but Shui Yuan had witnessed with her own eyes how the behemoth that was Blue Blood sect had fallen. This scene made her recall the scene from several decades ago, when the youthful youths had first joined the sect. Back then, Blue Blood sect was truly glorious. She slowly walked in front of Lu Yi and grabbed his right hand. Then, she took out a large seal that effused streams of light. Taking a deep breath, she said in a delicate voice, Blue Blood sect's 11th generation disciple, Palm Seal Envoy, Shui Yuan, respectfully requests the heavens to bear witness that the 11th generation disciple, Lu Yi, is conferred the position of Guardian Envoy of Blue Blood sect's Spirit Stream battlefield. With that said, she picked up the large seal and placed it on the back of Lu Ye's hand. Unknowingly, the heavens' secrets descended. Lu Ye's body trembled slightly before he quickly stabilized himself. He looked suspiciously at Shui Yuan. This is, Li Baxian explained from the side, every sect's encampment has its own guardian envoy and deputy envoy. For example, I'm the Pillheart sect's deputy guardian envoy. The guardian envoy and deputy guardian envoy have the responsibility of guarding their own encampment. Correspondingly, they also have a lot of authority. I won't be able to explain it all in a short time. Later, I'll record a jade slip for you. You'll understand after you read it carefully. He grinned. Right now, the Blue Blood sect's 11th generation disciples are only you and second senior sister. Second senior sister is a true Lake Realm cultivator and cannot enter the Spirit Stream battlefield casually. So, junior brother, I'll have to trouble you with the encampment at the Spirit Stream battlefield. Shui Yuan said from the side, you don't have to worry about the encampment. I'm just giving you this identity to make it easier for you to enter and exit the battlefield. After all, it's better to cultivate at the Spirit Stream battlefield. Lu Yi was curious. Our Blue Blood sect's encampment at the Spirit Stream battlefield hasn't been attacked by the Myriad Devil Ridge? Once his identity as a Blue Blood sect disciple was exposed, he would be besieged by many Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. There was no reason for the encampment to still exist. Li Baxian shook his head. In the past, there were people who attacked it, but not anymore. That's because there are no benefits to attacking the Blue Blood sect's encampment. If there are no benefits, who would do it? What's more, although there aren't any Blue Blood sect disciples there to oversee the situation, there's still a vicious beast. The Outer Circle's forces generally can't take it down. Shui Yuan also said, the situation at our Blue Blood sect's encampment is more complicated. Right now, there are many loose cultivators gathered there. When junior brother was lost at the Spirit Stream battlefield, I asked a few people to investigate your whereabouts, but they didn't find anything. As for those loose cultivators, apart from a few trustworthy ones, I'll let them stay. As for the rest, junior brother, you can do as you see fit. You can expel them if you want. Lu Yi nodded. Right now, he knew nothing about the situation at the encampment and his identity as a guardian, so he wasn't in a hurry to make a decision. It wouldn't be too late to decide after he familiarized himself with everything. Moreover, fourth senior brother was the vice guardian, so if there was anything he didn't understand, he could ask him for advice. Oh right, there's also that pet beast of yours. The people of Mount Cyan have already sent it to the encampment. If you want to go look for it, you can go now. I'll go now, Lu Yi hurriedly said. Come with me, Shui Yuan said as she led the way. Soon, she brought Lu Yi to Divine Secret Hall. Every sect had its own Divine Secret Hall. The main sect had one, and the spirit stream battlefield had another, where the divine secret pillar was placed. It could be said that this was one of the core areas of every sect, and it was directly related to whether the disciples of the sect could safely enter and leave the spirit stream battlefield. If this divine secret hall was captured, the consequences would be unimaginable. Under Shui Yuan's guidance, Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed it against the divine secret pillar. Just like the first time he entered the spirit stream battlefield, when the battlefield mark on the back of his hand resonated with the divine secret pillar, the entire world around him rapidly faded away, and everything around him became blurry. Remember to ask for a pet contract from the divine secret pillar, Shui Yuan reminded him. In the blink of an eye, the blurry and distorted surroundings became solid again. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing in an unfamiliar and desolate hall. This hall was extremely spacious, but there was no one inside. Looking at the heaven's secret pillar in front of him, Lu Yi felt that there was a close connection between it and his battlefield mark. This connection was not only because he was a disciple of Blue Blood sect, but also because he was the guardian of this place. Moreover, he also felt that there were some wonderful things hidden inside this divine secret pillar that he could perceive and even adjust to a certain extent through his identity as the guardian. He didn't know exactly how to adjust it and would need to explore it. He didn't act rashly as he knew too little about this right now, so it was better to wait until he learned from his fourth senior brother. The most important thing right now was to bring Hupu over. Yi should be very worried about him. Lu Yi walked out of the grand hall and was bathed in the bright sunlight. Looking up, he realized something interesting. The time in the spirit stream battlefield was the same as in the outside world, and it was the same time in the outside world. After withdrawing his gaze, Lu Yi suddenly noticed that there were gazes looking at him from all around. Lu Yi immediately reached out and pressed his hand against his waist, but found nothing. Only then did he remember that his long saber had been completely shattered. Looking around, Yang Kai saw several cultivators around him, some looking at him in surprise, some looking at him in surprise. These people's cultivations weren't high, only third or fourth order. It seemed that they were the rogue cultivators that his second senior sister had mentioned. The Blue Blood sect station on the Spirit Stream battlefield hadn't been occupied by any disciples for several decades, so although it still existed, it had become a gathering place for many rogue cultivators, forming a large market. However, these rogue cultivators had some self-awareness and didn't gather in the Divine Secret Hall, but outside of the station. This way, even if a Blue Blood sect disciple came here one day, they wouldn't offend the Blue Blood sect. Although rogue cultivators had no one to rely on and lived a poor life, it was because of their own weakness that they developed a smooth and slick heart. Under normal circumstances, rogue cultivators only sought to survive and wouldn't casually offend cultivators from sects. Blue Blood sect's Divine Secret Hall had been abandoned for several decades, so Lu Ye's sudden appearance naturally surprised the rogue cultivators. A familiar tiger roar came from a certain direction, and Lu Yi immediately turned around and rushed in that direction. A moment later, he saw the snow-white amber in the square. Chapter 173. But at this moment, Hupo's situation didn't seem too good. A huge gray eagle stood in front of him, looking down at him. The eagle's eyes revealed a scrutinizing look, as if it was considering whether this little thing in front of it could be eaten. Hupo's body was very sturdy, but compared to the gray eagle in front of him, it paled in comparison. Compared to the two fierce beasts, Hupo was only the size of the eagle's claw. This showed the gray eagle's size. Lu Yi remembered what Li Baxian said before. Although there were no disciples in charge of the Blue Blood sect's encampment, there was still a fierce beast that the sects in the outer circle generally couldn't take down. It seemed that this gray eagle was the fierce beast that fourth senior brother mentioned. Before entering, neither his second senior sister nor fourth senior brother specifically explained the situation of this fierce beast, so it seemed that this gray eagle wasn't much of a threat to him. Thinking so, Lu Yi hurriedly walked forward. The gray eagle sensed him and turned to look at Lu Yi, the scrutinizing look in its eyes growing stronger. Hoopa also saw Lu Yi and turned around to stand between him and the gray eagle. Beside him, there was a cultivator looking at this scene with a headache. "Is it Azure Sea Mountain's senior brother?" Lu Yi stepped forward and asked. This person wasn't weak, at least a ninth-order cultivator with an Earth-grade secret art. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escort Hoopa all the way here. "Yes," the person nodded slightly. "Greetings, senior brother." Lu Yi bowed. "Thank you for escorting me all the way here, senior brother." The person smiled. It was just on the way. He looked Lu Yi up and down and praised. "Junior brother Yi is really talented. The Battle of Golden Light Peak made me yearn for you." Lu Yi said humbly, "Senior brother is too kind. It's over. I'll really have to walk the 9 states with the name of Yi in the future." The two exchanged a few more pleasantries. The Azure Sea Mountain cultivator still had matters to attend to, so he took his leave. Lu Yi expressed his gratitude again. Watching him leave, Lu Yi raised his head to look at the gray eagle standing next to him. The other party also lowered his head to look at him, then bent down and gently touched Lu Yi's head with its beak. Lu Yi didn't know what it meant, but it flapped its wings and flew away, quickly landing on a mountain peak not far away. After Gray Eagle left, Hoopa finally relaxed. He walked to Lu Yi's side and rubbed his head against her. "Let's go, I'll take you to the Jade Blood Sect." Lu Yi patted Hoopa's head. These words were directed at both Hoopa and Yi. Ignoring the surprised gazes of the rogue cultivators along the way, Lu Yi directly returned to the Heaven's Secret Hall and fiddled with the Heaven's Secret Pillar. Before he came in, second senior sister told him to get a pet contract from here, but he didn't know how to get one. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Jade Blood Sect's disciple Lu Yi, respectfully requesting a pet contract." A warm feeling came from the battlefield imprint, and some information that he had never seen before was transmitted into his mind. In his consciousness there seemed to be an ancient beast skin parchment. It didn't take long for him to realize that this was a pet contract. It allowed the cultivator and the pet beast to form an inseparable bond. That way, the pet beast would be able to follow the cultivator into and out of the spirit stream battlefield. For example, Hoopa was a demonic beast born in the spirit stream battlefield. Without this pet contract, it would have been impossible for it to leave the spirit stream battlefield and head to the 9 state. This was a bit mysterious, and it reminded Lu Yi of the Heaven's Secret contract that Li Baxian had requested. Whether it was a Heaven's Secret contract or a pet contract, they couldn't have appeared out of nowhere. Where did these things come from? Why did he only need to respectfully request a Heaven's Secret contract to come out? And what was Heaven's Secret? Some questions arose in Lu Yi's mind, but he didn't delve too deeply into it. He felt that these things definitely contained a great secret, but it was still too far away from him. There was a price to pay for a pet contract, and the price was 100 merit points. The information Lu Yi had just received explained this point. He checked the information in his battlefield imprint. Name, Lu Yi. Identity, Jade Blood Sect's Disciple. Cultivation, 64 Apertures. Location, Spirit Stream Battlefield. Merit points, 943. There wasn't much change in his cultivation. During the battle to kill Dong Shai, he had already opened 63 apertures. After so many days, he had only opened one more aperture. The main reason was that he had been running and killing enemies all this time, so he didn't have any extra spiritual power to open his apertures. His merit points had changed a lot though. He remembered that after killing Dong Shai, he had less than 400 merit points, but now he had almost 1,000. Naturally, the majority of his merit points came from the battle on Golden Light Peak. While on Golden Light Peak, Lu Yi had fought 43 battles in a row and killed at least 30 enemies. Except for the first one he killed, which was a 5th order, the rest were all 6th order, each of which gave him 12 merit points. The final battle had even given him 21 merit points. On Golden Light Peak alone, Lu Yi had obtained almost 360 to 70 merit points, with the rest coming from killing enemies along the way. 100 merit points wasn't a small number. Although Lu Ye's merit points were close to 1,000 now, it wasn't easy to obtain them. These merit points represented his battle record along the way. However, Yi and Hu Po had known each other for a long time and had accompanied him all this time. Lu Yi had been able to escape death many times thanks to Hu Po's speed, so no matter what, he had to request a pet contract. Not to mention 100 merit points, even if it cost him all his merit points, Lu Yi wouldn't frown. With a single thought, a milky white vortex appeared in front of the Heaven's Fate pillar and slowly rotated. At the same time, Lu Ye's merit points decreased by 100. Reaching into the vortex, Lu Yi took out a simple animal skin parchment. According to the information he had obtained before, Lu Yi bit his fingertip and pressed his fingertip onto the animal skin parchment, pushing his spirit chi and sending it towards the confused Hu Po. The animal skin parchment burst into flames and shot towards Hu Po, merging into his body. Although Hu Po didn't understand what was happening, he didn't move because the flames didn't cause him any harm. A moment later, the flames went out and Lu Yi clearly felt that there was an additional layer of connection between him and Hu Po. This connection not only allowed them to perceive each other even if they were not too far apart, Lu Yi also seemed to be able to perceive Hu Po's thoughts more clearly. This pet contract was a bit mysterious. Without delay, Lu Yi took Hu Po back to Blue Blood Sect's headquarters. After he left, several heads peeked out from the entrance of Heaven's Fate Hall and saw that there was no one inside. Only then did they confirm that Blue Blood Sect's Lu Yi had come to station. The news quickly spread, and many itinerant cultivators became worried. Inside the sect's Heaven's Fate Hall, second senior sister and fourth senior brother were still waiting. Seeing Lu Yi and Hu Po appear together, Li Baxian smiled and said, "Did you see Xiao Hui?" Xiao Hui. Lu Yi was stunned but quickly reacted. Li Baxian was talking about the giant gray eagle and his eyes couldn't help but twitch. Who named it? Such a handsome and majestic beast was actually given such a casual name. That's the pet beast that eldest senior brother tamed back then. Li Baxian explained with a smile. After eldest senior brother left the Spirit Stream battlefield, it stayed in the station. That's why second senior sister told you not to worry about it. Blue Blood Sect Station doesn't have anything good right now, and with Xiao Hui guarding it, the sects in the outer circle won't dare to offend us. As he spoke, he tossed a jade slip to Lu Yi. I've written down the general situation of the station in here. Take a look at it when you have time. As a guardian envoy, cultivating in the station is still very beneficial, especially since your cultivation is still low. Lu Yi took the jade slip and nodded slightly. Suddenly, he remembered something and patted Hu Po's head. Come out and greet my second senior sister and fourth senior brother. Shui Yuan and Li Baxian looked at Hu Po in confusion, not knowing how he should greet them. But soon, their expressions turned to surprise. Yi's figure slowly floated out, a little shy as she whispered, "Greetings, second senior sister, fourth senior brother." She didn't know how to address Shui Yuan and Li Baxian, so she just followed Lu Ye's lead. During the Battle of Golden Light Peak, Yi hadn't shown herself, mainly because there was no point in showing herself. Moreover, she was a spirit body, so it wasn't convenient for her to show herself to others. But here, it didn't matter. Whether it was her second senior sister or fourth senior brother, they were all on the same side. Li Baxian stared at her for a while before looking at Lu Yi. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Not bad, little junior brother." He had an expression that said all men understood. Lu Yi explained, "Yi is Hu Po's companion spirit. Along the way, she and Hu Po have helped me a lot." Spirit body? Shui Yuan was curious. Even with her experience, she had never seen an existence like Yi. She curiously stepped forward and raised her hand to pinch Yi's arm. To her surprise, she found that it wasn't any different from pinching a solid body. However, she could see that Yi was indeed a spirit body, but she could transform between an illusory and solid body. Shui Yuan and Li Baxian's scrutiny made Yi feel uneasy, and she looked over for help. Shui Yuan patted her head. Since you're little junior brother's companion, you're a member of Blue Blood sect. From now on, treat this place as your home. Her words seemed to have a great soothing effect. Yi stared at her, her eyes slowly turning red before she fiercely nodded. From now on, I also have a home. Thinking back to her decision to leave Blue Cloud Mountain with Lu Yi, Yi was filled with joy. Li Baxian winked at Lu Yi before walking out. Lu Yi stepped forward and followed. Walking out of Sky's secret hall, Li Baxian said, "Originally, after you entered the sect, you would have arranged for an instructor to teach you cultivation, especially now that you're a fifth-order cultivator. You should have seen the state of Blue Blood sect, so I'm afraid no one will be able to teach you anything. Although the old man is strong, he hasn't taught anyone for many years, and he's quite rigid, so he's not suitable for this kind of thing." Suddenly, a stone flew out of nowhere and smashed into Li Baxian's head with lightning speed. A visible bump appeared on Li Baxian's head, but he acted as if nothing had happened. He turned around and looked at Lu Yi with the bump on his head. "It's a good thing that you've been cultivating well. However, the most important thing now is to determine your own faction. Have you thought about it carefully? A weapon cultivator." Lu Yi stared at Li Baxian's head and gave a decisive answer. Chapter 174. Along the way, he had slashed his way through. His fighting style was enough to determine his future faction. Li Baxian nodded. Weapon cultivators are a very large faction, among which sword cultivators are the most respected. There is a saying that the sword is the king of weapons, and sword cultivators are the strongest among weapon cultivators. Since you want to become a weapon cultivator, do you want to cultivate the sword? I'm a saber user, senior brother. I know, but I've seen your saber before, it's similar to a sword. If you want to cultivate the sword, I can teach you so you won't have to take many detours. Lu Yi thought seriously for a moment before slowly shaking his head. I'm not compatible with swords. I used a sword at first, but it just didn't feel right. Li Baxian earnestly advised. This kind of thing can be slowly worn in, you'll get used to it. Lu Yi insisted. No need, fourth senior brother, I'm still used to using sabers. The corner of Li Baxian's eyes twitched. His persuasion had failed. He sighed and said, since that's the case, go and prepare a suitable weapon. Starting tomorrow, I will teach you some things, some very practical things. The corners of his mouth slowly curled up, and Lu Yi suddenly had a bad feeling. His saber had been completely shattered on the golden light. Fortunately, it was only a low-grade spirit artifact, so it wasn't too distressing to break. Now, it was not easy to find a suitable weapon. Previously, he had killed many people on the Golden Light Peak and seized many storage bags. At first, he would collect those storage bags himself, and no one from the Myriad Demons Ridge would stop him. Later, when First Senior Sister saw that he was too tired, she would help him clean up after every battle, and no one dared to stop her. A few days ago, Second Senior Sister gave him his spoils of war. The restrictions on those storage bags had been opened, but those guys didn't have many good things. What Lu Yi obtained the most were spirit stones, spirit pills, and spirit talismans. As if seeing Lu Ye's troubles, Li Baxian said, "Go take a look at the jade slip I gave you, you'll understand what to do." Lu Yi returned to his residence, took out the jade slip, and carefully examined it. There were many things recorded in the jade slip, and it was most suitable for someone like Lu Yi who knew little about the cultivation world. Presumably, fourth senior brother had already considered this. The more Lu Yi examined it, the more he felt the mysteries of the so-called Heaven's Secret. It could be said that although he had spent half a year on the Spirit Stream battlefield, his understanding of this world was only the tip of the iceberg. 2 hours later, He put down the jade slip and slowly digested the information in his mind. After a long time, he entered Heaven's pillar and entered the spirit Heaven's battlefield. Heaven's palace. Heaven's origin. Lu Yi to heaven's solas. Soon as the words left his mouth, a vortex appeared in front of him. An irresistible force emerged from the vortex, and before Lu Yi could react, he was sucked in. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing in an incomparably spacious hall. Rows of weapon racks were placed in the hall, and he couldn't see the end of them at a glance. No matter what kind of weapon it was, there was everything here, and every single one of them was a spirit weapon. This was Lu Ye's first time experiencing something like this, and it was a bit of a novelty. Silently sensing his surroundings, he found that his body was still in Heaven's secret hall, but his consciousness had entered this place. The Heaven's secret treasury was a mysterious place that fourth senior brother had mentioned in the jade slip. In the 9 provinces, in the spirit stream battlefield, any cultivator with enough merit points could make a deal with the Heaven's secret treasury. Li Baxian's Heaven's secret treasury contract was a deal, and Lu Ye's pet contract was also a deal. Therefore, if one wanted to buy something, making a deal with the Heaven's secret treasury was the most convenient, because it had everything. The only downside was that one could only use merit points to make a deal with the Heaven's secret treasury. This was different from the Heaven's Secret Merchant Alliance. The Heaven's Secret Merchant Alliance could use spirit stones, but relatively speaking, making a deal with the Heaven's Secret Treasury was the fastest. As long as one had enough merit points, they could buy any unowned treasure in the world. If Lu Yi wanted to find a suitable saber in a short amount of time, coming here to make a deal with the Heaven's Secret Treasury was undoubtedly the best choice. No one knew what the Heaven's Secret Treasury was, just like how the cultivators of the 9 provinces had never been able to find the exact location of the spirit stream battlefield. Therefore, even if someone wanted to take the treasures in the Heaven's Secret Treasury, they couldn't do it. Based on what was known today, the Heaven's Secret Merchant Alliance had some connection with the Heaven's Secret Treasury. This was because some people had discovered that some of the treasures in the Heaven's Secret Treasury would be sold by the Heaven's Secret Merchant Alliance, and the things the Heaven's Secret Merchant Alliance bought would also appear in the Heaven's Secret Treasury. Lu Yi had only come here to find a saber, so he couldn't be bothered to find out more about these secrets. However, looking at the endless shelves of weapons, he felt a headache coming on. Sometimes, when there were too many things, it would be hard to choose. Therefore, he said, "Saber." The scenery around him distorted slightly, and the entire treasury suddenly shrank. Although it still looked very big, at least he could see the end. The spiritual weapons on the shelves were all in the style of long sabers, just as Lu Yi had requested. There were many sabers that were similar to the one he had before. He casually picked one up and used his spirit power to examine it. He found that it wasn't much better than the one he had before, so he casually put it down and picked up another one to examine it. It was the same. He thought for a moment, then said, 9 restrictions. Then, he added, focus on strengthening the blade. The quality of a spirit artifact depended on the material used to forge it as well as the number of restrictions placed on it. 9 restrictions was the limit of a low-rank spirit artifact. Anything with more than 9 restrictions was a mid-rank spirit artifact. This was the information his 4th senior brother had told him in the jade slip. A spirit artifact's quality wasn't necessarily higher, it also depended on who was using it. Restrictions required spirit chi to activate, and the more restrictions there were, the greater the consumption. If one's cultivation was too low, even if they held a high-rank spirit artifact, they wouldn't be able to activate the restrictions on it. With Lu Ye's current 5th order cultivation, a 9-restriction low-rank spirit artifact would be enough for him to use for a long time. As for strengthening the blade, it was naturally because Yang Kai didn't need the spirit artifact to be sharp. The sharpness spirit inscriptions could solve this problem. The heaven's secret treasury changed again, and the number of spirit artifacts that appeared this time decreased significantly, leaving only a dozen or so rows. Lu Yi walked around and inspected them one by one. Very soon, he found a suitable saber among them. This spirit artifact saber was similar to the one he had used before, but it was much heavier. However, to Lu Yi, it was undoubtedly more convenient because his current strength was much greater than when he had left Azure Cloud Mountain. Inspecting the interior of the long saber, Yang Kai found 9 spirit inscriptions that were connected to each other through a mysterious method. 7 of the 9 spirit inscriptions were used to strengthen the blade, while 2 were used to enhance the spirit artifact's lethality. These 2 spirit inscriptions were very similar to his sharpness spirit inscriptions. Can spirit inscriptions be connected like this? Lu Yi was puzzled. In the end, his understanding of spirit inscriptions was limited to those he obtained from the talent tree. He could activate the 3 spirit inscriptions at will, but he knew nothing about the other spirit inscriptions. Suppressing his desire to explore further, Lu Yi was undoubtedly very satisfied with this long saber. Perhaps for other cultivators, this spirit artifact's lethality wasn't strong enough, but for Lu Yi, this wasn't a problem. With the enhancement of his sharpness spirit inscriptions, he could cut through anything. The price was also marked. On the body of the long saber, there were a few numbers that emitted a faint glow. 138. In other words, if Lu Yi chose to take this long saber out of the Tianji treasury, he would lose 138 merit points. He didn't know if this price was expensive or cheap, but compared to the price of a pet contract, it definitely wasn't cheap. Lu Yi didn't continue looking. The difference between low-grade spirit artifacts wasn't that great. It was already good enough that he could find such a long saber. With a thought, the surrounding scenery suddenly collapsed. When he came back to his senses, he was already standing in the Tianji Hall. His mind felt a little tired. This was the price to pay to communicate with the Tianji treasury. It could be said that the longer one stayed in the Tianji treasury, the more tired one's mind would be. He originally wanted to look for something in the Tianji treasury, but now he could only give up on that. Looking down, he held the long saber that cost 138 merit points in his hand. Lu Yi unsheathed the saber. The saber light didn't give off a feeling of sharpness. Instead, it felt very heavy. Only then did he notice that there were 2 small characters on the saber's hilt. Carefully looking at it, he recognized that it was Mount Pan. In other words, this saber had a name, but he didn't know who made it. He casually swung it a few times and found that it didn't feel any different from when he was testing it in the Tianji treasury. In fact, it was even more convenient. Sheathing the saber, he stepped out of the Tianji Hall. According to the instructions in the 4th Senior Brother's Jade Slip, he had to go to another place in the encampment. Not long after he left, a young cultivator hurriedly ran over. He tidied up his appearance outside the Tianji Hall and stepped in. Looking around, he couldn't see Lu Ye's shadow. For a moment, he was confused. He turned around and looked at the other cultivator who followed him. "Didn't you say that Lu Yi came? I saw him here just now." The cultivator who followed him explained. "He went back again?" The young man was a little annoyed. When he received the news that Lu Yi had appeared again, he hurriedly rushed over. Who knew that he would still be a step too late? Thinking about it, he ordered the person who followed him, "You stay here and keep watch. When he comes again, notify me immediately. If possible, ask him to wait for me here for a while." That person agreed without hesitation. At this moment, Lu Yi had arrived at another place. This was a building complex made up of small rooms. These were the cultivation rooms of the Blue Blood sect's disciples. Disciples who had nothing to do could enter secluded cultivation here. Every sect had such a place in a secluded place. It wasn't unique to the Blue Blood sect. However, because the Blue Blood sect hadn't accepted disciples for several decades, this place was overgrown with weeds and was barren. Chapter 175. After spending some time cleaning up the weeds near the cultivation room, Lu Yi found a cultivation room that looked pleasing to the eye and pushed the door open. Although this place was desolate and unattended, it was a place that the Jade Blood sect had spent a lot of money to build. After all, it was related to the cultivation of the disciples and could not be careless. Therefore, every cultivation room here was covered by a spirit array. Only the disciples of the Jade Blood sect could enter. However, because no one had used it for a long time, the spirit array here had stopped operating long ago. Looking up, the room was not big and there were no extra decorations. There was only a trace of a spirit array on the ground. It was a spirit gathering array that could gather world energy from all directions and increase the efficiency of cultivation. Not only that, there were 8 grooves around the spirit gathering array. If spirit stones were placed in the grooves, it could increase the density of world energy in the room. The world energy in every sex station was denser than in the wild. Take the Jade Blood sex station for example. The world energy here was about 10% denser than in the wild. It was not much because this was only the most basic increase. As long as the Tianji pillar was still functioning, the area covered by the Tianji pillar would receive this kind of increase. This was also the reason why rogue cultivators gathered in the Jade Blood sex station. The world energy here was denser. However, if the sect was destroyed, the ownerless Tianji pillars would no longer have this effect. For example, the Ying Mountain where Lu Yi had once stayed also had a Tianji pillar, but the world energy there was no different than in the wild. A 10% increase was only the most basic. If one had enough merit points, they could buy a buff from the Tianji pillar. It was the power of the Tianji pillar that could make the world energy in the station even denser. For example, the top forces in the core circle had world energy several times or even more than 10 times that in the wild. Cultivating in such an environment was undoubtedly much more efficient. The Jade Blood sex Tianji pillar did not have any buffs and only had the most basic function. Fortunately, there was the spirit gathering array in the cultivation room. This was also why second senior sister said that it would be better to cultivate in the station. The spirit gathering array under Lu Ye's feet did not operate because it had already lost its energy supply. He was not in a hurry to activate the spirit gathering array. Instead, he examined the patterns of the spirit gathering array. An hour later, he came to a conclusion. The runic patterns of the spirit gathering array were 80% similar to his spirit gathering rune. Both of them could be said to have originated from the same source. It could even be said that his spirit gathering rune was a miniature spirit gathering array. Lu Yi took out 8 spirit stones and placed them in the 8 grooves of the spirit gathering formation. Then, he walked to the center of the formation and pressed his hand down, activating his spiritual energy. As his spiritual energy continued to be consumed, the array formation in the room began to operate. Lu Yi could clearly feel the surrounding spiritual energy rushing over. In a short period of time, the spirit qi in the room became denser than outside. This was not only because the spirit gathering array was gathering the spirit qi of heaven and earth, but also because the spirit qi in the 8 grooves had been stimulated. However, there was a limit to this kind of increase. Lu Yi felt that the spirit qi in the room had increased by about 20% and stopped increasing. Even if the spirit gathering array gathered more spirit qi, it would dissipate if it was not absorbed. Lu Yi thought for a moment, then raised his hand and pressed it against a wall. Following the crazy consumption of his spiritual energy, a huge spirit gathering rune was constructed. The spirit qi of heaven and earth surged even more intensely. Previously, when he obtained the spirit gathering rune, he had considered this point. If the spirit gathering rune was large enough, then it should have a very obvious effect. Now, he had finally verified it. Moreover, because the spirit gathering rune would constantly absorb spirit qi of heaven and earth to replenish itself, as long as it was not deliberately destroyed, it could continue like this. It was different from the spirit gathering array. The spirit gathering array relied on the power of spirit stones to operate. While consuming the spirit stones, it also stimulated the spirit chi within the spirit stones. The stimulated spirit chi would be absorbed by the cultivator. Sensing his own body, he found that he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy. After all, he had never constructed such a huge spirit gathering array before. However, he could still construct another one. Soon, the second spirit gathering rune appeared on the wall on the floor. Lu Yi immediately felt as if his entire body had been hollowed out. However, the price was worth it. The spirit chi of heaven and earth surged even more intensely. Now, in this small cultivation room, there was a spirit gathering array in effect, as well as 2 spirit gathering runes. Lu Yi really wanted to know what kind of effect cultivating in this environment would have. He took out a praying mat from his storage bag and threw it on the floor. Sitting cross-legged, he began to construct small funnels in his spiritual cavities. After an incense stick's worth of time, all 64 spiritual cavities had been reinforced with spirit gathering runes. In a split second, Lu Yi felt the surrounding spirit chi crazily rush into his body. Through the operation of his cultivation method, it was transformed into his own spirit chi. His body, which had consumed a lot of energy, quickly began to recover. 6 hours later, Lu Yi stood up again and constructed another large-scale spirit gathering rune on the third wall of the cultivation room. The spirit gathering rune's effect had increased once again. He sensed the changes in his spirit chi. In the end, he came to a shocking conclusion. Cultivating in this environment, a day and night's improvement was almost equivalent to refining 5 spirit pills. He had discovered the miraculous effect of the spirit gathering rune on his 29th aperture. At that time, he had made an experiment and reinforced his 29th aperture with spirit gathering runes. In the end, he had come to the conclusion that cultivating for a day and night was almost equivalent to refining a spirit accumulation pill. Now, he had opened 64 apertures, more than twice as many as when he opened 29 apertures. Moreover, the cultivation environment had greatly changed, which greatly improved the effect of his cultivation. After reaching the 5th order spirit stream realm, he needed to consume more than 20 spirit pills for every aperture he opened. In other words, even if he didn't take any spirit pills and cultivated in this environment, it would only take him 4 or 5 days to open one aperture. If he could take spirit pills, the efficiency would be even faster. Right now, the world energy in the blue blood sex station was only 10% richer than in the wild, and the Heaven's Fate Pillar didn't have the slightest support. What if he could strengthen the Heaven's Fate Pillar and make the station's world energy 2 times, or even 5 times, 10 times richer than in the wild? Just thinking about it made Lu Yi fascinated. He had to find a way to restore his talent tree's ability to burn pill toxins, and find a way to strengthen the Heaven's Fate Pillar. He planned to go to the Heaven's Fate treasure house to look for the former. As for the latter, he had no clue. He would have to ask his 4th senior brother about it, but the jade slip his 4th senior brother gave him didn't mention it. His consumed spirit chi had been completely restored, and Lu Yi was now trying to open the 65th aperture. But before he could open the 65th aperture barrier, a message came from the battlefield mark. Looking down, he saw that it was from his 2nd senior sister. Your 4th senior brother is looking for you. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to communicate with each other in the spirit stream battlefield in the 9 continents because the two were not in the same space, but Lu Yi was the guardian of the Blue Blood sect, and his 2nd senior sister was the guardian of the Blue Blood sect, so they could communicate with each other. Only then did Lu Yi remember that he had been so immersed in his cultivation that he had forgotten his agreement with his 4th senior brother. He didn't know what his 4th senior brother wanted to teach him. After sending a message back, Lu Yi ended his cultivation. The 8 spirit stones were almost used up, but Lu Yi didn't care. He pushed open the door and walked out, closing it behind him. Then, he used his authority as a guardian to activate the nearby spirit array. This place would be his exclusive cultivation place in the future, and no one could enter at will. Walking over to Heaven's secret hall, Lu Yi saw a man sitting at the entrance, meditating and looking bored. The sound of footsteps alerted this person, and he quickly opened his eyes. Seeing Lu Yi, he was overjoyed. "Are you Lu Yi of the Blue Blood sect, fellow cultivator Lu?" "Indeed," Lu Yi responded. Looking at the other party, and seeing that he was a third-order cultivator, he frowned. "What's the matter?" The man quickly replied, "Senior Brother Qin Yu is looking for fellow cultivator Lu. He wants to discuss the market with you." "Market?" Lu Yi was puzzled. Why would he want to discuss the market with him? However, he quickly reacted. The market here had been maintained for many years, and a large number of rogue cultivators had gathered here. Only the Heavenly Secret Commerce Union had stayed here. But after he arrived, the situation of the rogue cultivators became a little awkward. They were reluctant to leave, but it was inappropriate for them to stay. After all, this was the Blue Blood sect's territory. No one cared about them before, but now they did. "Fellow cultivator Lu, please wait a moment. I will ask Senior Brother Qin to come over," the man said, and was about to send a message. "I still have something to do. Let's talk later." Lu Yi was in a hurry to return to the sect, so he didn't have the leisure to wait here. Moreover, he didn't know how to deal with this kind of matter, so it was best to ask his senior brothers and senior sisters. "When will fellow cultivator Lu come again?" "I will ask Senior Brother Qin to wait here," the man asked dutifully. "Tomorrow." After Lu Yi replied, he returned to the sect with the help of the Heavenly Secret Pillar. Walking out of the Heavenly Secret Hall, Lu Yi followed the fragrance to the dining room. The table was already filled with delicious food, and just smelling it was enough to make one's mouth water. These delicacies weren't just for filling the stomach. These were medicinal cuisines specially cooked by his second senior sister, and each dish had a special effect. Lu Yi was surprised to find that today's dishes were extraordinarily numerous. Li Baxian had already sat down, eating and drinking. Seeing Lu Yi return, he greeted him warmly. "Little junior brother, sit down and try the fish I caught." Lu Yi sat down, picked up a fish with his chopsticks, and took a bite. It was unexpectedly delicious. Li Baxian said with a smile, "The blood-red trout of the Moon Lake used to be used to temper the bodies of the disciples. Every disciple was given a certain amount, but now you can eat as much as you want. Let me tell you, if you need spirit stones one day, go to the Moon Lake and catch a few. It won't be a problem to sell each one for a few hundred spirit stones." Cough, cough, cough. Lu Yi coughed violently. He didn't expect this thing to be so expensive. Also, this is Little Gray's favorite food. When you go back to the base, bring 2 for him. He has been neglected for so many years, so he's quite pitiful. Got it. Lu Yi nodded. "Little junior brother, do you drink?" Before Li Baxian finished speaking, he felt a pair of sharp eyes looking at him. He hurriedly changed his words. "You're still young, so don't drink. You have to be careful when you go out. Don't let those loose women force you to drink and trick you into various positions." Lu Yi. Chapter 176. On the square in the front hall of Jing Shou Peak, Lu Yi held the hilt of his saber under the blood-colored golden flame flag as he stared forward with a solemn expression. Opposite him, Li Baxian casually held a sword in his hand as he smiled and said, "In half a year, you've reached the 5th order. Your strength has increased too quickly. In fact, sometimes it's not necessarily a good thing to increase one's cultivation too quickly, because others have more time to polish their battle skills while you don't. Especially for an armament cultivator, battle skills are very important. Under the golden light, you have more than enough courage to fight the enemy, but your lack of skill is your biggest shortcoming." In half a year, he had grown from a little cultivator who had just opened his apertures to the 5th order realm and had even mastered a defensive spirit rune. This matter had long since spread and was no longer a secret. Lu Yi originally thought that the temple master would ask about this matter, and he had already thought about it. If the temple master asked, he would tell him the truth. But in fact, since he woke up, the temple master had not asked about this matter at all. He had only told Lu Yi a few days ago when everyone was lying in bed and recuperating. Now, many people knew that he had obtained some fortuitous encounters in the spirit stream battlefield, so perhaps some people would have ideas about this, so he should be more vigilant. Of course, the possibility of such a thing happening was not high, because the temple master had said that there were many fortuitous encounters in the spirit stream battlefield. Lu Ye's growth to the fifth order in half a year seemed fast, but there had been even faster in history. There was once a mortal who had obtained a fortuitous encounter in the spirit stream battlefield and reached the ninth order in just a year. The spirit stream battlefield had many mysterious places that contained all kinds of mysteries. It was difficult for ordinary people to see them, but those who were fated could easily obtain them. Almost every few years, someone would obtain a fortuitous encounter. The cultivation world had become accustomed to this kind of thing, and most people just envied others' good luck. For those who really pursued something, it was better to work hard than to envy others' good luck. The old man is a Dharma cultivator and second senior sister is a medical cultivator. They are too strong and haven't taught anyone for many years, so they won't be able to teach you anything. As your fourth senior brother, I will teach you well. Li Baxian laughed heartily. For him, teaching Lu Yi seemed to be a great job. You're a fifth-order cultivator, so I'll suppress my cultivation to the fifth order. I won't take advantage of you, use all your skills to attack. As he spoke, he took a sip from the wine gourd in his hand. However, the moment he lifted the wine gourd, Lu Yi rushed towards him. Halfway through, he unsheathed his saber and slashed horizontally. You know how to sneak attack. Very good. Li Baxian didn't move his feet. Instead, he leaned back slightly. The Pan Shan saber brushed past his neck, but didn't hurt him in the slightest. He even had the leisure to comment on Lu Ye's saber. When facing an enemy, you must maintain this kind of indomitable momentum. However, it's not a good thing if you use too much strength. It's easy to be caught by others. The blade in Lu Ye's hand slashed down diagonally, but Li Baxian dodged it again. He didn't even move his feet as he continued. Insufficient adaptability, slow to change moves. On the square, Lu Yi continuously attacked with his saber. Li Baxian dodged while jabbering on, causing Lu Ye's head to be filled with anger and his attacks to become even more ferocious. However, he helplessly discovered that the gap between him and his fourth senior brother was too big. Although his fourth senior brother had suppressed his cultivation to the fifth order, Lu Yi couldn't even touch a corner of his robes. Every time Lu Yi slashed out, fourth senior brother was able to dodge as if he could predict the future. Moreover, up until now, his fourth senior brother hadn't even used his sword. Instead, he simply held the long sword in his hand and took a few sips of wine while speaking. Only now did Lu Yi realize how terrifying his fourth senior brother was. If a character like his fourth senior brother had appeared on the golden platform, he would have been beaten to a pulp. After taking another sip of wine, Li Baxian's aura suddenly changed. He raised the long sword in his hand and casually resolved Lu Ye's attacks, leisurely saying, "Little junior brother, be careful, I'm about to attack." In the next moment, a series of clanging sounds rang out, causing Lu Ye's expression to become solemn. His fourth senior brother's sword didn't have much strength, nor was it fast, but the timing of each strike was just right, making it difficult for Lu Yi to form a slash. A moment later, Lu Yi felt like he was a puppet being manipulated, only able to passively defend against his fourth senior brother's attacks. Li Baxian stepped forward step by step, while Lu Yi retreated step by step. When their swords collided, Li Baxian said, "In a battle between armament cultivators, you must control your own rhythm and make your opponent follow your rhythm. Once you do this, you can lead your opponent by the nose, just like this. As soon as his voice fell, he swung his long sword, causing Lu Ye's body to suddenly lean back, leaving his chest wide open as a sword light pierced straight towards him. When Lu Yi saw this sword, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. With a thought, a defensive spirit rune appeared on his chest. However, in the next moment, he froze. Looking down, he saw that his fourth senior brother's sword had pierced his chest, only an inch away from his heart. His defensive spirit rune actually didn't have time to block this sword. And was fourth senior brother for real? Lu Yi looked up and saw Li Baxian's eyes drooping. Little junior brother, you're dead. He suddenly pulled out his sword, causing blood to spurt out as Lu Yi staggered back. Not far away, Yi, who was watching the battle in high spirits, suddenly exclaimed. She got up and was about to run towards Lu Yi. A hand pressed down on her shoulder. Yi turned her head and saw Shui Yuan shaking her head at her. In the future, when he walks on the battlefield and in the 9 provinces, the enemies he encounters won't show mercy to him. Now that he's suffering here, he'll suffer less in the future. Although Yi was worried, she knew that her second senior sister would never harm Lu Yi, so she endured it and continued to watch. At the same time, she also understood why her second senior sister had prepared a large basin of medicinal liquid before the battle. Again, Lu Yi took a deep breath. Although his chest was almost pierced through, his fourth senior brother's attack was measured and didn't hurt his vital parts. He raised the long sword in his hand and charged towards Li Baxian again. A moment later, blood splashed as Li Baxian's faint voice sounded, "Little junior brother, you've died again." A moment later, "Little junior brother, you've died 3 times." An hour later, Lu Yi was lying on the ground with a pale face, his body covered in wounds. Although they weren't serious, he had lost a lot of blood and was unable to fight again. In just a short hour, he had been killed by his fourth senior brother over 100 times, and this was under the premise that his fourth senior brother had held back. The sun was so bright that Lu Yi found it difficult to open his eyes. A shadow covered his eyes as Li Baxian squatted down in front of him and smiled. "How do you feel?" Lu Yi didn't know how to answer. How could this feeling be described as terrible? He couldn't help asking, "Fourth senior brother, has our blue blood sect always trained its disciples like this before? If this was really the case, then it would be a waste of disciples. How is that possible?" Li Baxian chuckled. "You're all alone now, so we can only take care of you. You don't need to worry, the medicinal cuisine you ate before has the effect of replenishing your vitality, so you'll be fine after a night of rest." Lu Yi now understood why there had been such a large table of good food before. "Then, fourth senior brother, have you ever taught others before?" "No." "So you don't know how to teach others either." Because he didn't know how to teach others, he could only rely on Lu Ye's own injuries to remember each fatal crisis, and this kind of physical memory was undoubtedly the most unforgettable. Li Baxian patted him on the shoulder and said sincerely, "Let's be considerate of each other. Also, this was second senior sister's idea, it had nothing to do with me." Before he could finish speaking, second senior sister grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and lifted him off to the side. Immediately after, Shui Yuan helped Lu Yi up and led him to a nearby room where a medicinal liquid had been prepared. After being treated by second senior sister, Lu Yi was full of energy again. Her skin and flesh wounds healed quickly. The medicinal liquid concocted by second senior sister was extraordinarily effective. Coupled with the fact that she was a medical cultivator herself, Lu Yi got up in the evening with her whole body drenched. His wounds had not completely healed yet, but he should be fine after another night. Moreover, the old and new scars all over Lu Ye's body had disappeared. This was second senior sister's miraculous method. In the evening, after eating another table of medicinal cuisine, Lu Yi entered the Spirit Stream battlefield using the Heaven's Fate Pillar. He planned to cultivate on the battlefield at night as this was the most efficient place to cultivate. As soon as he appeared in Heaven's Fate Hall, he felt the aura of strangers outside. Lu Yi turned his head and saw two heads looking in his direction. One of them was the one he met yesterday, while the other was a stranger, but judging from his aura, he was a seventh-order cultivator. Lu Yi thought about it for a moment before stepping out. The seventh-order cultivator greeted him enthusiastically and cupped his fists. "Are you fellow Taoist Lu Yi from Blue Blood Sect? This one is Chen Yu." Lu Yi nodded and threw a contract to Chen Yu. "If there are no problems, sign it." "Chem?" Chen Yu looked confused as he took the contract and read it carefully. When he returned during the day, Lu Yi asked second senior sister and fourth senior brother about how to deal with the rogue cultivators in the station and also learned about the general situation here from second senior sister. Although second senior sister could not enter and leave the spirit stream battlefield at will, there were a few rogue cultivators she trusted here. Second senior sister had asked them to inquire about Lu Ye's whereabouts, but their cultivations were not high, so before news of Lu Yi spread, they did not manage to find anything useful. By the time they received the news, it was already too late. Through those rogue cultivators, second senior sister had some understanding of the situation in the station. Chen Yu was one of them and was the strongest among the rogue cultivators. After all, this was the outermost area, so a seventh-order cultivator was already very high. Moreover, the market here had always been managed by him, which was why he wanted to talk to Lu Yi. The market in the station was not the same as the ones Lu Yi had passed by before. There was no Heavenly Secret Commerce Union subunion here, because this was still Blue Blood Sect's station. Rogue cultivators could come here, but Heavenly Secret Commerce Union could not, otherwise, it would be a provocation to Blue Blood Sect. However, even without a Heavenly Secret Commerce Union subunion, this place was still quite popular because the world energy here was 10% richer than in the wild, which was a great attraction to rogue cultivators. Chapter 177. In the past, there were no Spirit Stream Realm disciples in the Jade Blood Sect, so there was no one to manage the station, allowing rogue cultivators to run over. But now, things were different. The Jade Blood Sect had Lu Yi, and if Lu Yi insisted on driving them away, those rogue cultivators wouldn't be able to stay. After the news of Lu Ye's appearance in the station spread out yesterday, many rogue cultivators felt nervous, fearing that they would be driven away. This was why Chen Yu had hurriedly come to find Lu Yi. He hadn't thought that before he had even explained his purpose, Lu Yi would give him a contract. Looking down, Chen Yu's expression gradually eased. The contents of the contract were very simple. The situation in the market would remain as it was for the time being, but the Jade Blood Sect could let the rogue cultivators leave at any time. At the same time, the Jade Blood Sect entrusted Chen Yu with managing the market, and if the rogue cultivators wanted to stay in the market, depending on their cultivation, they would have to pay 2 to 5 spirit stones per month to the Jade Blood Sect. This was a contract drawn up by Shui Yuan, and the fee was not high. If it was just a few spirit stones, the rogue cultivators could afford it. This would bring a certain amount of income to Lu Yi and also let the rogue cultivators know that this was the Jade Blood Sect station, and if they wanted to stay here, they would have to pay a certain price. Chen Yu quickly finished reading it and happily bit his finger and pressed his fingerprint on the contract. After exchanging their respective brands with Lu Yi, he happily rushed to the market, ready to tell the good news to the rogue cultivators who were waiting for news. Compared to the benefits of the rogue cultivators, Chen Yu's gains were naturally much greater. Although he was the nominal manager of the market before, after all, he had no status, but now it was different. With the Jade Blood Sect's entrustment, he had a real identity, and it would be more legitimate for him to manage the market. Lu Yi didn't have to worry about the rogue cultivators for the time being. The station was so big that he couldn't use it all by himself, so instead of offending people now, it was better to keep it as it was. In front of the Tianji pillar, Lu Ye's mind connected to the Tianji treasure house, looking for the treasures he needed. After a cup of tea's time, A palm-sized box appeared in Lu Ye's hand and he hurried to the cultivation room. The spirit chi of heaven and earth in the technique practicing room was obviously denser than in other places, especially in the room he stayed in yesterday. Because of the 3 spirit-gathering spirit runes that he had set up, the spirit chi here was much denser than in other places. He opened the door, walked in, and sat down with the box in his hand. Looking at the box in his hand, Lu Yi felt both happy and distressed. He was glad that the Tianji treasury indeed had all sorts of good stuff. As long as it was something he wanted, he could find it inside. What made his heart ache was that this small box had cost him 200 contribution points. It was much more expensive than the mountain plate saber. He gently opened the box, and a ball of flame about the size of a baby's fist immediately appeared in front of his eyes, and a scorching aura spread out. It was a small ball of earth core fire, the cheapest kind of strange fire that Lu Yi found in the Tianji treasure vault. The talent tree's ability to burn the pill poison had to be recovered as soon as possible. This was related to the increase of his cultivation. In the past, Lu Yi had guessed that the talent tree needed to absorb some scorching heat or flame energy in order for the leaves on it to burn, allowing him to obtain more spirit marks. However, this had always been a guess, and there was no way to verify it. But after a trip to the Tianji treasury, this conjecture was confirmed, because when he stood in the middle of those treasures and strange flames, the innate skill tree that was dormant in his source spirit aperture clearly became active. However, because those treasures were all in the Tianji treasury, the innate skill tree could not absorb their power. Until now, when Lu Yi opened the box in his hand, a trace of abnormality immediately came from his source spirit aperture. Lu Yi immediately focused his mind, and in the next moment, he saw the roots of the talent tree growing out, piercing into the earth core fire inside the box. In the blink of an eye, the scorching heat disappeared, and the earth core fire disappeared. The 4th leaf on the talent tree began to burn. Before leaving Mount Xinyun, the 4th leaf had begun to shine after the battle with the barrier-breaking fruit. But because it did not absorb enough energy, it did not undergo a qualitative change. Today, it finally began to burn. In other words, Lu Yi had one more spirit rune. He suppressed the anticipation and joy in his heart and continued to observe, only to find that it was gone. The 5th leaf did not show any signs of burning, and it did not even shine. Lu Yi frowned. This was somewhat different from what he had expected. But soon, he found that the talent tree had recovered its ability to burn pill toxins. As his spirit chi circulated, gray mist was constantly being burned out. The pill toxins in his body had accumulated to a peak after the battle at the Golden Summit, causing his spirit chi to become obscure and dim, which had a great impact on his strength and cultivation. Since the battle at the Golden Summit, Lu Yi did not dare to take spirit pills. Although second senior sister had a method to help him expel the pill toxins in his body, and the effect was not bad, she could not completely remove them. This kind of thing required a long time of recuperation and adjustment. But after the talent tree recovered its ability to burn pill toxins, in just a short time, the spirit chi in Lu Ye's body became pure and flawless again. The hidden danger had finally been resolved. Lu Yi relaxed. Combining all the previous events, his guess was correct. The talent tree could absorb scorching heat or some flame energy, and that energy could burn the leaves of the talent tree, allowing Lu Yi to master spirit grain S1 after another. In addition, that energy could also be stored in the talent tree as a type of fuel to burn the pill poison. This time, only one leaf burned. It was probably because the talent tree needed to accumulate fuel, so most of the energy was stored. Only a small part of it was used to burn the 4th leaf. There were many treasures in the Tianji treasury that were suitable for the talent tree to absorb. Just the earth core fire alone was enough, and Lu Yi had only bought one of them. It seemed that he still had to go get merit points. As long as he had enough merit points, the talent tree would be able to play a greater role. Looking at his remaining 500 merit points, Lu Yi sighed slightly. A few days ago, he had almost broken through 1,000 merit points. Merit points were difficult to accumulate, but they were spent as quickly as flowing water. Not in a hurry to cultivate, Lu Yi looked at the fourth burning leaf of the talent tree and took a deep breath. His expression became solemn and his mind was immersed in it. The burning leaf rapidly enlarged in Yang Kai's field of vision, obscuring all his thoughts. His mind was forcibly pried open, as if a red-hot iron had reached in and stirred it. After a long while, Lu Yi finally regained his senses, his body drenched in sweat. He shook his head to dispel the discomfort. Even if he was already a fifth-order cultivator, investigating the spirit patterns on the talent tree was still an extremely unpleasant experience. Fortunately, he did not pass out like the first time. Blood stain. This was the name of the fourth spirit pattern. Investigating its mysteries, Lu Yi soon discovered that although this was an offensive spirit pattern, it did not directly increase one's lethality like the sharpness rune. It had other uses. However, it was undeniable that if this spirit pattern was used well, it was not impossible for the weak to defeat the strong. In fact, it would give him a way to fight a strong enemy. Every spirit pattern on the talent tree had great uses, but if he wanted to obtain these spirit patterns, he would first need to obtain some suitable treasures for the talent tree to absorb energy from. In other words, he would need a lot of merit points. Although he still had more than 500 merit points, Yang Kai was not prepared to buy the earth core fire. He would keep some of his merit points in reserve, who knew when they would come in handy. Getting up, Lu Yi placed spirit stones in the 8 positions of the spirit gathering array. When he reached the last piece, Lu Yi thought for a moment before taking out the blood-red scale he had obtained from the dragon's spring and placing it in the groove. The spirit gathering array could stimulate the power in spirit stones, so perhaps it could stimulate the power in this scale. There were a lot of bloodlines on the scale, which Hupa had absorbed several times before. Every time it was very addictive. Lu Yi did not dare to imitate Hupa. After all, a monster beast's body was not something he could compare to. However, if the spirit gathering array could stimulate its power, then it would be a safe way to absorb the power in the scale. Next, Yang Kai began constructing spirit gathering spirit patterns in his spirit apertures. Once everything was ready, he swallowed the pill and started cultivating. Soon, the room was filled with dense spiritual energy. Within the spiritual energy there was also some red mist flowing. Each mist was like a dragon swimming in the air. Days passed, and during the day, he would temper his skills under Li Baxian's care and protection. Every day, he would be killed by fourth senior brother many times, and every time, he would be covered in blood and would be dragged by second senior sister to soak in a bath for treatment. At night, he would enter the station and explore the mysteries of the Tianji pillar and his authority as a guardian. Sometimes, he would go to the Tianji treasury to broaden his horizons and cultivate. Li Baxian did not teach him too many fighting skills, nor did he teach him any sword arts or blade arts, because such things were worthless in Li Baxian's eyes, and were only good for looking good. Good blade arts and sword arts were the simplest killing techniques. All he did was let Lu Yi use his body to remember each wound. This kind of teaching method could be called cruel, and only the Blue Blood sect had the qualifications to teach like this. If it were any other sect, who knew how many disciples they would have already been crippled. At the dining table, Lu Yi was eating in large mouthfuls while asking Li Baxian for guidance. Fourth senior brother, how can I quickly obtain a large amount of contribution points? Kill the enemy. Li Baxian replied concisely. I naturally know how to kill the enemy, but didn't you say that it would be unsuitable for me to cause trouble outside? It had only been a month since the battle on Golden Light Peak, and the storm had just subsided, so Li Baxian had warned Lu Yi to be a bit more stable in the near future. Fortunately, Lu Yi had been recuperating during this time and had been running back and forth to the station every day, so there was no chance for him to go out and cause trouble. Besides killing the enemy, The only other option is to sell things to the Tianji treasury. Chapter 178. Not only could the Tianji treasury be bought, but it could also be sold. No matter what it was, as long as it was valuable, it could be sold to the Tianji treasury. However, it wasn't worth it. Lu Yi had tried to sell the mountain plate saber to the Tianji treasury, but it was only worth 50 merit points. It had to be known that he had spent 138 merit points to buy it. The price difference was more than double. The most valuable item he could sell was the scale he had obtained from the dragon's spring. He had tried it a few days ago and found that it was worth more than 8,000 merit points. However, Lu Yi would definitely not sell this item. The power contained within it was extremely beneficial to Hu Pu and himself. Now, every time he cultivated, he would place this scale armor in a spirit-gathering formation, slowly stimulating the power within it. Over the past few days, Lu Yi could clearly feel his physique strengthening. After swallowing the blood threads a few times, Hu Pu became more and more majestic. The barrier-breaking fruit was slightly less valuable than the scale. Each fruit was worth 500 merit points, and it couldn't be sold. It was extremely useful for cultivators, and Lu Yi would have a use for it in the future. Moreover, he had already given the 2 barrier-breaking fruits to his second senior apprentice sister. She wasn't just a medical cultivator, she was also an alchemist. She could supplement the barrier-breaking fruit with other herbs to refine barrier-breaking pills, maximizing their effects. As for the value of the barrier-breaking pill, Lu Yi had once investigated it in the Tianji treasury. Each pill cost 300 to 400 merit points, and a single barrier-breaking fruit could be refined into 4 or 5 barrier-breaking pills in the hands of second senior sister. Is there no other way? Lu Yi continued to ask as he ate the food his second senior apprentice sister gave him. Declare war. Li Baxian smiled. Declare war on the myriad Devil Ridge faction. Set a large amount of merit points in advance. If you win, the merit points will be yours. Lu Ye's face darkened. He was the only disciple in the Jade Blood Sect's encampment. Who could he go to declare war? There were several myriad Devil Ridge sects nearby, and even if they accepted, he had no hope of winning. Moreover, he didn't have the capital to declare war. If he wanted to win merit points from others, he had to have merit points in the early stages. Why don't you participate in the Battle of Spirit Creek? Li Baxian had just finished speaking when Shui Yuan glared fiercely at him. Little junior brother can't stay in the encampment forever. Senior sister, you and the old man can't always protect him. You can protect him for a while, but can you protect him forever? Blue blood sect's disciples shouldn't be raised in a greenhouse. The earlier they go out and broaden their horizons, the better it will be for them. Shui Yuan was silent as she picked up more food for Lu Yi. Lu Yi looked around and saw that his second senior sister was silent, so he asked, "What is the Battle of Spirit Creek?" Li Baxian began to explain to him. In about half a month, the results of the sect's grade assessment will be out. Normally, after each grade assessment, there will be this Battle of Spirit Creek. Through Li Baxian's explanation, Lu Yi slowly understood what the Battle of Spirit Creek was. According to the rules of previous years, before the sect's grade assessment, all the sects would remain calm, because if they made any inappropriate moves at this time, it was possible that their sect's grade would fall. This was a responsibility that no one could bear. However, it was impossible for the Spirit Creek battlefield to remain so peaceful. The two camps were destined to oppose each other, so every time the sect's grade assessment was over, it would become extremely lively. The Battle of Spirit Creek was born out of the blue. This was the operation of Heaven's Secret, and no one could resist it. Heaven's Secret seemed to be using this method to intensify the confrontation between the two camps. After the sect's grade assessment, the guardian envoys of the various sects' encampments would be able to sign up and participate in the battle. With the support of their sect's Heaven's Secret Pillar as a bargaining chip, they would be able to enter an unknown small space to participate in the battle. If they were killed, the support would be taken away by the killer. The support of the Heaven's secret pillar was able to make the world energy aura in the encampment much richer, with each support increasing it by 10%. Lu Yi had tried to purchase it with merit points before. The first support cost 500 merit points, which was not a lot. However, after asking Li Baxian, this kind of support would become more expensive as it progressed. Therefore, the strong could obtain a large amount of support in the Battle of Spirit Creek, and if they brought it back to their sect's encampment, it would greatly increase the world energy aura in the encampment. Not only that, there were also many strange treasures in the unknown small space, such as the barrier-breaking fruit, which was extremely rare in the outside world, could be found there. It could be said that the Battle of Spirit Creek, which was held once every 3 years, was a grand event for all the sects of the 9 prefectures. Basically, all the sects in the 9 prefectures would participate. After hearing this, Lu Yi couldn't help but be fascinated. He had been thinking about how to increase the world energy aura in the encampment. If it weren't for the fact that it would cost too many merit points, he would have already bought a support. He had never thought that there would be such a method. However, since it was the Battle of Spirit Creek, naturally only the Guardian Envoys and Vice-Guardian Envoys could participate. Each sect could only send 2 representatives. One had to know that there were many sects in the 9 prefectures, so if each sect sent 2 representatives, the number of people participating would be extremely large. But 4th Senior Brother, I'm only a 5th Order, at most I can kill 7th Order Masters. If I encounter the Guardian Envoys of the Core Circle sects, how could I possibly be their opponent? Lu Yi slowly shook his head. Although he was very interested in this Battle of Spirit Creek, he still had some self-awareness. 4th Senior Brother Li Baxian was the Vice-Guardian Envoys of Pill Heart sect. If a character like him was also participating in this Battle of Spirit Creek, how could a 5th Order like Lu Yi possibly compete? Li Baxian said, although Heaven's fate is cruel, it won't send you to your deaths in vain. It will use its own methods to maintain a balance. Although the Battle of Spirit Creek will take place in the same small space, there will be an invisible suppression in that place. The further you go, the stronger the suppression. For example, if I enter that small space, I will only appear in the most central area, and if I go out, my cultivation will gradually be suppressed. On the contrary, if you enter with your current cultivation, you will only appear in the outermost area, and the cultivations of the people you encounter won't be too high. Therefore, when participating in the Battle of Spirit Creek, the higher your cultivation, the stronger the enemies you encounter will be. Of course, the Guardian Envoy's cultivation is at least 7th Order, and the Vice Envoys may be 7th Order or 6th Order. So there's such a good thing. Then there's no problem. Lu Yi became interested. Li Baxian glanced over at him. If it were an ordinary 5th Order boasting like this, he would definitely scoff, but this little junior brother of his, he really couldn't treat him as an ordinary 5th Order cultivator. After these days of teaching, he could feel Lu Ye's rapid growth. Shui Yuan said leisurely, Blue Blood Sect is not eligible to sign up. The Battle of Spirit Creek requires the Guardian Envoys and Vice Envoys to participate together. How can you go alone? Unless you can find a Vice Envoy to accompany you. Second Senior Sister's words sounded like she didn't approve of Lu Yi participating in the Battle of Spirit Creek, but she wasn't completely certain. Lu Yi could naturally feel her concern, but as his 4th Senior Brother said, his 2nd Senior Sister and Sect Master could protect him for a while, but they couldn't protect him forever. Therefore, if he wanted to participate in the Battle of Spirit Creek, he would need to find a Vice Envoy. Where could he find one? A suitable candidate needed to be someone he could trust and had a high enough cultivation. Otherwise, bringing a 3rd or 4th Order cultivator with him would only be a burden. There were many rogue cultivators, but Lu Yi had never been in contact with them. Without even mentioning the issue of trust, it was likely that none of the rogue cultivators would be willing to participate in the Battle of Spirit Creek. After all, it was a place where people could die at any time. After thinking about it for a long time, Yang Kai still couldn't figure it out. After eating, as usual, he was beaten by his fourth senior brother and dragged by his second senior sister to treat his injuries. At night, he entered the station to cultivate. On this day, while Lu Yi was cultivating, he suddenly felt an invisible force surge out from Sky's secret hall and radiate throughout the station. He frowned, got up, and walked towards Sky's secret hall. When he came to the Sky's secret pillar to investigate the situation, he quickly understood the whole story. The results of the sex grade assessment had come out. This assessment was a result of Heaven's secret and could not be interfered with by humans. Originally, the Jade Blood sect was going to be removed from the rankings in this assessment. However, with the addition of him as a disciple, the sect was barely able to remain. This was also because the sect had one Spirit Sea stage cultivator and one True Lake stage cultivator. Otherwise, an ordinary sect would not be able to retain a rank of Tier 9 with just 3 people. Heaven's Secret had its own set of standards for the assessment of a sect's grade, but generally speaking, it was directly related to the number of cultivators in the sect and the level of their cultivation. After confirming that there was no problem somewhere, Lu Yi returned to the cultivation room to cultivate. The next day, in Jade Blood sect's main sect, 2 figures collided. Sword and saber collided, and a harsh sound of friction rang out. The 2 figures were in a stalemate. Blood burst out from Lu Ye's chest and abdomen. He quickly turned around and held his saber vigilantly. On the opposite side, Li Baxian lowered his head and looked at his chest. There was a faint trace of blood there. He smiled slightly, put away his sword, and turned to look at Lu Yi. "Little junior brother, you passed. I have nothing left to teach you. In the future, when you fight with enemies, just trust your saber." This was the first time in a month that Lu Yi had injured Li Baxian. At the same level of cultivation, Li Baxian was simply an invincible existence. This made Lu Yi realize the power of the 10th place on the Spirit Stream list. Lu Yi put away his saber and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your guidance, senior brother." Li Baxian threw out his wine gourd, which immediately expanded. He jumped lightly and stood on top of it. "The results of the sect's grade assessment are out. I have to return to Pill Heart sect to prepare. Little junior brother, I'll come to see you next time. If you encounter any trouble on the battlefield, remember to tell me." With that, he waved at Shui Yuan and faced the direction of the main hall. He bowed solemnly and straightened his body. The gourd carried him and turned into a stream of light, quickly disappearing into the distance. He left as soon as he said he would. He was truly carefree. Lu Yi watched him leave and asked the question that had been in his heart for many days. "Second senior sister, since fourth senior brother came from our sect, why did he become a disciple of Pill Heart sect?" It seemed that he also had a third senior brother who had joined another sect. However, fourth senior brother clearly treated this place as his home. The sect master and second senior sister did not treat him as an outsider. He came and went as he pleased. Chapter 179. In the end, Lu Yi couldn't figure out the answer to this question because his second senior sister didn't explain it to him. Maybe she didn't want to explain, or maybe she didn't think it was the right time. If she didn't say anything, Lu Yi naturally wouldn't ask. As usual, he soaked in the wooden tub full of medicinal liquid and was carefully treated by his second senior sister. His injuries quickly improved. When it was almost evening, Lu Yi walked out refreshed and Hoopa ran over to rub his head against him. During his time in the Blue Blood sect, Hoopa had clearly become much stronger. After all, he ate and slept well every day, and even swallowed a large number of spirit accumulation pills. Occasionally, he would run over to Lu Yi to eat a blood vein on his scales, so he was quite carefree. As for Lu Yi didn't know what she was busy with at the sect master's place. In the first few days, she was still following behind his second senior sister and mysteriously told Lu Yi that she wanted to learn how to become a medical cultivator from his second senior sister. Because along the way, Lu Yi had been injured too frequently. It was foreseeable that he would have to fight a lot in the future, so Yi's biggest wish was to become a medical cultivator. This way, even if she couldn't help much in battle, she could still treat Lu Yi's injuries after the battle. But after a few days she disappeared. Lu Yi didn't know what happened, but it seemed that she wasn't learning well. As a result, she was now at the sect master's place every day. Perhaps she wanted to become a medical cultivator. As far as Lu Yi knew, the sect master was a medical cultivator named Seduso. He took out the scale armor and gave it to Hu Po, who had leaned over and sucked on it. Hu Po, who looked majestic, immediately stiffened and fell stiffly to the ground, his blood and qi churning. Second senior sister wasn't surprised. Lu Yi had told her about the origin of the scale armor. She had carefully studied it and determined that it had a strong body-tempering effect. As long as one controlled their strength well and didn't refine too much at once, there wouldn't be any danger. Second senior sister also said that there must be some secret hidden under the dragon spring. Perhaps it was some kind of fortuitous encounter. If he was strong enough in the future, he could find an opportunity to take a look. Lu Yi still remembered that Han Jiyu from the Tai Luo sect. If it weren't for this woman exposing him at the Golden Light Summit, he wouldn't have had to fight so many sixth-order cultivators. Lu Yi would remember this enmity. Sooner or later, he would get revenge. Lu Yi didn't pay any attention to Hu Po, whose legs were kicking wildly as if he was about to die, and headed straight for the divination hall. A moment later, he appeared in the Tianji hall of the encampment. He raised his hand and tapped on the battlefield imprint to send out a message. Soon there was a response. There aren't many people who meet the conditions. I've asked around, but no one dares to go. There are two who aren't afraid of death, but one is a fifth order and the other is a fourth order. I don't think Brother Lu is willing to bring a burden with him. Previously, he had asked Chen Yu to help him find suitable candidates to participate in the Battle of Spirit Creek. But now, it seemed that the situation was not optimistic. The Spirit Stream Garrison Battle was such a famous event that almost all cultivators had heard of it. However, the rogue cultivators gathered here generally didn't have high cultivations. Besides Chen Yu, who was a seventh-order cultivator, there were only a few sixth-order cultivators left. All of these people were cautious, or in other words, timid. With their strength, they could already venture into the inner circle of the battlefield. The reason why they stayed in the outer circle was because they were afraid. Every time the Battle of Spirit Creek occurred, the casualties would be great. How could they dare to participate in this kind of thing? Even Chen Yu didn't dare to agree. If he really had the courage to participate in the Battle of Spirit Creek, why would he stay in the outer circle? He would have run to the inner circle long ago. The rogue cultivators couldn't be counted on, and Lu Yi was already mentally prepared for this. Since that was the case, there was no other way. Lu Yi walked out of the divination hall and took out a foot-long fish from his storage bag. This fish was blood-red in color, as if it was made of blood jade. This was the blood-red trout of Moon Lake. Li Baxian had caught a lot of them during her stay in the Blue Blood sect, but most of them had been eaten. A small number had been taken by Lu Yi. A moment later, a huge shadow fell from the sky and landed in front of Lu Yi. A gust of wind blew past, causing Lu Yi's face to hurt. It was the gray eagle called Xiao Hui. It lowered its head and pecked lightly, catching the blood-red trout in its mouth and swallowing it whole. Previously, second senior brother had said that Xiao Hui liked to eat blood-red trout, so Lu Yi would occasionally bring a few over. However, it was impossible to get full from eating them. The difference in size was too great. Xiao Hui held the foot-long blood-red trout in its mouth like it was an earthworm. However, Xiao Hui really liked this kind of thing, so its attitude towards Lu Yi became much more cordial. For dozens of years, no one cared about it. It had been guarding the blue blood sex station, never leaving. It was only when Lu Yi arrived that it gained a bit of vitality. After eating the fish, Xiao Hui tilted its head and looked at Lu Yi, its eyes filled with anticipation. Lu Yi took out another one and tossed it over. Xiao Hui caught it accurately. Looking up at the eagle, Lu Yi said, "Xiao Hui, can you take me somewhere?" Little Gray looked down at him, then lowered its head and hooked Lu Ye's collar with its curved beak. Then, with a light flick, it threw Lu Yi onto its back. Lu Ye's face suddenly went black. "Just nod your head, I can get up myself. You're making me lose face." Xiao Hui spread its wings and the wind gradually howled. Lu Yi felt his body suddenly become weightless as he soared into the sky. He quickly crouched down on the eagle's back, while pushing his spirit chi to resist the wind. An eagle's cry rang out, as if it was asking Lu Yi which direction to go. Lu Yi took out his 10-year-old map and pointed it in a certain direction. The giant eagle immediately flew in that direction. Lu Yi hurriedly activated his battlefield mark and sent a message back to his second senior sister. A moment later, he received a reply, "Be careful on the road, come back soon." Crouching on the extremely spacious back of the eagle, Lu Yi truly understood what it meant to be as fast as lightning. Xiao Hui's speed was much faster than Tang Wu's flight-type spirit artifact. After all, this was a flying monster beast that had been around for several decades. Lu Yi seriously suspected that Xiao Hui's strength was comparable to a ninth-order master who had cultivated a heaven-grade secret art. However, due to the rules of the Spirit Stream battlefield, Xiao Hui was unable to break through. Thinking back to his second senior brother's artifact flight, Lu Yi couldn't help feeling a little fascinated. However, his current cultivation was still low, so if he wanted to fly, he would need to raise his realm. Generally, when a cultivator reached the 7th order, they would have the ability to fly, but if they wanted to, they would need to reach the 8th or 9th order. Only at that time would they have enough spirit chi to support flight for a period of time. After reaching the 9th order, one could switch to a heaven-grade secret art. Only by switching to a heaven-grade secret art would one be qualified to break through to the Spirit Stream realm and break through to the Cloud River realm. Once one reached the Cloud River realm, they would be able to fly. For Lu Yi, this was still a bit far away. Not only could Xiao Hui fly fast, but his endurance was also extremely high. After a full day and night, he finally landed to restore his strength. As for food, Lu Yi didn't need to worry about it as he could easily catch some of it from the wild, and even ran over to share it with Lu Yi. For Lu Yi, the only thing that made him uncomfortable was that he needed to constantly push his spirit chi to protect himself from being frozen or blown off by the wind. There was basically no one flying in the sky of the outer circle, so the journey was extremely smooth. It wasn't until 5 days later that Lu Yi arrived at his destination at dusk. According to the map, this was Ing Mountain. He wanted to participate in the Battle of Spirit Stream, but he couldn't count on the rogue cultivators, so Lu Yi could only find a helper himself. However, he didn't know many people, so after thinking about it, he thought of Hua Si. When he left Ing Mountain, this woman was a 5th order. After such a long time, she should be a 6th order cultivator. With such a cultivation, she was qualified to participate in the Battle of Spirit Stream. Most importantly, she was also a medical cultivator, so if he was injured, she could treat him. Of course, Lu Yi wouldn't force her to do anything. Everyone had their own aspirations, and Hua Si was a medical cultivator who practiced medicine to help the world. She might not be willing to participate in such a chaotic battle. This time, he just came to give it a try. In addition, he had been saved twice, so the rogue cultivators didn't have a good time. Their situation wasn't safe either. Lu Yi thought that if possible, he could bring Hua Si and the others to the Blue Blood sect, where they would at least have some guarantee of safety. He had thought about this when he left Ing Mountain, but at that time, he didn't even know where the Blue Blood sect's gate was, so he naturally couldn't make any promises rashly. The giant eagle slowly descended, bringing up a gust of strong wind. The bamboo buildings in the surroundings emitted creaking sounds as one figure after another scuttled out from the bamboo buildings. Many pairs of eyes looked at the giant eagle in fear and helplessness. Lu Yi saw Hua Xiai and Ruan Lingyu, as well as the burly Kong Niu, but there were a few more people he didn't know. Are they the new members of the Rogue Society recently? But what puzzled Lu Yi was that the cultivation of these unfamiliar faces was actually quite good. Among them, there was a 7th Order and a 6th Order. The 7th Order cultivator shouted, "Which fellow Taoist has graced us with his presence?" At the same time, he stared at Lu Yi vigilantly, secretly releasing his spirit qi. Lu Yi looked at Hua Xiai, and the smile on his face gradually faded. He saw an obvious scar on Hua Xi's white neck, which should have been caused by a sharp weapon. Such an obvious scar meant that the injury wasn't light, and judging from the angle and position of the scar, it didn't look like it was caused by someone else. Instead, it looked like Hua Xiai had cut herself. Why did this woman choose to commit suicide? Lu Yi frowned. At that moment, Hua Xiai suddenly raised her hand and made a hand seal. A layer of gray qi visible to the naked eye swept out in all directions with her as the center. Ruan Lingyu, who was standing next to Hua Xiai, immediately shouted, "Yi, quickly kill them! They are from Myriad Demon's Ridge." With a bang, Kong Niu rushed towards a 5th Order cultivator and instantly engaged in a fierce battle with a strange face that Lu Yi had never seen before. Kong Niu was now a 5th Order cultivator, so his opponent's strength was on par with his, but as soon as they clashed, the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivator was at a disadvantage because mushroom-like things were rapidly growing out of his opponent's mouth and nose, disrupting his mind. Chapter 180. The 5th Order cultivator wasn't the only one who suffered such a fate. The unfamiliar faces were the same, especially the 7th Order cultivator. His situation was especially serious. Small mushrooms suddenly grew out of his 7 orifices, and he quickly wiped them away. Looking down, he saw that his hands were covered in blood. He quickly reacted and shouted, "Cheap slut, how dare you poison me?" As he spoke, he leaped up and charged towards Hua Xiai. Hong, Lu Yi stepped off the eagle's back and rushed towards Hua Xiai and Ruan Lingyu. He unsheathed his long saber and slashed horizontally. A fiery red light cut through the air, creating a shower of sparks as the huge force behind it forced the 7th Order master back. Lu Yi was also forced back 2 steps, but he quickly stabilized himself, stamped his foot on the floor of the bamboo house, and rushed out. 2 silhouettes, one advancing and one retreating, clanking sounds could be heard as the 2 spirit weapons collided with each other. Lu Yi had never fought with a 7th Order cultivator since he started cultivating, so he immediately felt the pressure. However, he was now much stronger than he was during the battle at Golden Light Peak. Although his cultivation was still at the 5th Order, his killing skills had greatly improved under the tempering of his 4th senior brother. The mountain coiling saber in his hand seemed to have a life of its own, slashing out rays of light. In just a few breaths of time, Lu Yi found an opportunity to slash the 7th Order cultivator's chest and abdomen. The 7th Order cultivator's spirit qi protection was broken, and a foot-long wound appeared on his chest and abdomen. The 7th Order cultivator staggered back with a look of shock on his face. He obviously didn't expect to be injured by a 5th Order cultivator. He didn't have time to think as Lu Yi rushed forward again. After a few more breaths of time, another wound appeared on the 7th Order cultivator's body. The shock in his eyes had already turned into horror because he found that this 5th Order Origin Realm cultivator, who had appeared out of nowhere, was even faster and stronger than himself. What frightened him even more was that the saber in his opponent's hand was extremely lethal, and once he was struck, he would definitely be injured. Double images appeared in front of his eyes and his ears began to buzz. He didn't know what poison he had been poisoned with, but his spirit qi was rapidly draining away, accompanied by colorful mushrooms growing out of his orifices. These mushrooms were rapidly devouring his spirit chi. He had to end the battle quickly and capture that lowly servant girl to cure the poison. With that thought, he made a prompt decision. He reached into his storage bag and took out a spirit weapon, shouting, "Go!" The spirit artifact immediately turned into a stream of light and shot towards Lu Yi at lightning speed. A seventh-order cultivator could already cultivate the way of artifact manipulation. When the stream of light appeared, Lu Yi's hair stood on end. A huge sense of crisis enveloped him. His eyes quickly fixed on the stream of light. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. He saw the angle and direction of the stream of light, and saw the spirit weapon wrapped in the stream of light. Tempering his body in the dragon pond and the scales he obtained from the dragon pond not only strengthened his physique, but also his eyesight. In simple terms, his eyesight would be able to catch things faster, and at the same time, his reaction would also be faster. They couldn't block it. At this moment it was too late to swing his saber. The speed of the flowing light was too fast. When Lu Yi urged his spirit energy, a spirit inscription appeared on his chest. His spirit energy continued to pour into it. With a bang, the spirit energy exploded. Lu Yi grunted. He tasted something sweet in his throat and his mouth was full of the taste of rust. His feet were firmly rooted to the ground, but his whole body was pushed by a powerful force. His feet plowed 2 deep marks on the ground. Yi! Ruanlingyu, who was standing next to Hua Xiai, exclaimed. Her face turned pale. At the same time, Hua Xiai gritted her teeth and changed her hand seal. Pu pu pu. A series of muffled sounds rang out. The small mushrooms that grew out of the seventh-order cultivator's orifices exploded one by one. Spores spread all over his face. The cultivator immediately screamed. His whole face seemed to have been poured with strong acid. It made a ripping sound as his flesh and blood became a mess. Lu Yi raised his saber and cut off the continuous stream of light on his chest. His figure rushed out, and under the horrified gaze of the seventh-order cultivator, he stabbed with his saber. The mountain-coiling saber enhanced with sharpness spirit inscriptions pierced through the cultivator's heart and came out from his back. Lu Yi pulled out the saber and blood gushed out. Ah! Another scream rang out. Lu Yi turned his head and saw that the sixth-order cultivator was being held in Xiao Hui's beak. He didn't know how he provoked Xiao Hui, or if Xiao Hui took the initiative to attack him. The huge beak closed, and the cultivator was split in half. Blood and internal organs poured out. At the same time, Kong Niu also finished off his opponent. In terms of strength, Kong Niu might not be a match for Hua Xiai. After all, he had just reached the fifth order. However, these outsiders were all unknowingly poisoned by Hua Xi's poison. When Hua Xiai detonated the hidden poison, their strength decreased. In the middle of a life-and-death battle, small mushrooms suddenly grew out of one's orifices. Anyone would be frightened, especially when those small mushrooms were rapidly absorbing one's spirit chi to grow. The hasty battle ended. Lu Yi shook off the blood on his long saber and returned it to its sheath. He rubbed his stuffy chest. Although the defensive spirit inscriptions had blocked the damage of the spiritual weapon, there was no way to alleviate the force of the collision. Who is it? Lu Yi frowned. He had just arrived here and hadn't realized what had happened. Hua Xiai suddenly attacked, followed by Ruanlingyu's shout, and the battle broke out. A few stray dogs from the inner circle, Hua Xiai explained faintly. She looked at Lu Yi with concern. Are you okay? Lu Yi shook his head. Come in and talk. Hua Xiai walked into the bamboo house. Lu Yi raised his foot and followed. Ruanlingyu stayed outside and cleaned up the battlefield with Kong Niu and the others. After entering the house, Hua Xiai poured him a glass of water. Lu Yi saw a trace of relief in her tired face. Obviously, she hadn't been doing well during this time. Lu Yi took a sip of water. Are we being targeted? Although Hua Xiai didn't say much, Lu Yi could vaguely guess what was going on. He had been worried about this since he was in Ing Mountain. Hua Xiai was quite famous in the nearby market. Many injured cultivators would come to her for treatment. Although they could earn some cultivation resources by doing this, if they were targeted by a powerful cultivator from the myriad Devil Ridge one day, the people of the Scattered Wandering Club would not be able to resist. However, this was the outermost circle of the battlefield. Hua Xiai herself was a fifth-order cultivator, and the Scattered Wanderers Club had more or less enough power to protect themselves. However, life couldn't always be so smooth. In the end, Hua Xiai was targeted. At first, it was because a seventh-order cultivator was injured. He came to Hua Xiai for treatment because of her reputation. The other party was from the Myriad Demon Ridge camp. Hua Xiai naturally didn't want to, but because her fists weren't as big as his, she could only treat him. After the seventh-order cultivator's injury was healed, he refused to leave and made an even more excessive request. He wanted Hua Xiai to earn spirit stones for him to cultivate. In his view, a Scattered Wanderer's medical cultivator was a money tree. As long as he could control Hua Xiai, this money tree, he wouldn't have to take the risk of going to the inner circle. It was because he was injured in a fight in the inner circle that he ran back to the outer circle. This situation had been going on for more than 20 days. During these days, Hua Xiai gave all the spirit stones she earned in the market to the other party in exchange for the safety of Ruan Lingyu and the others. Where are the others? The last time she came, there were still a dozen people from the Scattered Wanderers Club, but this time there were only 3 left. They were killed. Hua Xiai sighed. The seventh-order cultivator wanted to control Hua Xiai, but Kong Niu and the others were unwilling. A conflict broke out between them and the Scattered Wanderers Club, and only a few people were left. If it weren't for Hua Xiai threatening with her own life, she was afraid that the entire Scattered Wanderers Club would have been killed. That was how the scar on her neck came to be. Until today, when Lu Yi suddenly came, Hua Xiai almost didn't hesitate to take action because she knew that no matter what Lu Yi came here for, once he understood her situation, he would definitely take action. Since that was the case, she had to take the initiative. Fortunately, Lu Yi was stronger than she imagined and smoothly took care of the seventh-order cultivator. Noticing Lu Ye's gaze, Hua Xiai raised her hand to cover the scar and showed her usual gentle smile. Anyway, I have to thank you. Lu Yi waved his hand. Without me, they probably wouldn't have lived long. He did not know what Hua Xiai had done to those people, but Lu Yi had seen the miserable state they were in just now. He knew that even without him, Hua Xiai would be able to kill those people after some time. Of course, she would have to take some risk. Hua Xiai was a medical cultivator, but medical cultivators could also kill. According to Lu Ye's knowledge, there were some medical cultivators who liked to use poison and were called poison doctors. These people could often kill people without leaving a trace, and those who were killed by them all died miserable death. Let's not talk about me. What about you, the famous Lu Yi? Why are you here instead of enjoying life in the Blue Blood sect? Did you lose something here? She had obviously heard about the battle at the Golden Light Summit. Veins popped out on Lu Ye's forehead. My name is Lu Yi. Hua Xiai looked surprised. I remember someone telling me that his surname is Lu and his name is Yi. Was he lying to me? She looked at Lu Yi faintly and slowly shook her head. Sure enough, men's words can't be trusted. She sighed again. But forget it, who told you to save me? As the old saying goes, if you can't repay a life-saving grace, you can only repay it with your body. Her tone gradually weakened. Lu Yi raised his brow and looked at Hua Xiai, only to see her lowering her head shyly. As she spoke, the jade hand covering her neck slowly slid down and rested on her lapel. Lu Yi suddenly felt his mouth go dry and his eyes go blank. Isn't this happiness coming too fast? The hero saves the beauty, and the beauty throws herself into his arms. Does this also happen to me? Hua Xiai smoothed out the wrinkles on her lapel. Her movements meticulous, Lu Yi looked up and met a pair of teasing eyes. Lu Yi closed his eyes and took a deep breath, looking forward to seeing this woman in front of him. I really am a piece of shit. Chapter 181. Inside the bamboo house, Hua Si smiled sweetly while Lu Yi looked indignant. After a while, Hua Si chuckled and said, "You saved me once and I saved you twice. You still owe me one. Even if you want to repay me with your body, you should be the one to repay me with your body." What you said makes sense. Lu Yi nodded. How could he refuse such a good thing? As he spoke, he took 2 steps forward and undressed. Hua Si's smile remained as she looked at him. Lu Yi unbuttoned his shirt and was about to take off his pants when Hua Si's eyebrows twitched. "Sister Hua Si." Ling Yu suddenly pushed the door open and entered. She met Lu Ye's gaze, who was unbuttoned and holding up his pants. The atmosphere suddenly became quiet. "Sorry to disturb you." Ling Yu quickly retreated and gently closed the door. Her heart was beating wildly and her cheeks were burning. She didn't know when Hua Si and Brother Yi. No wonder Brother Yi came all the way here to find Sister Hua Si. In the room, Lu Yi slowly put on his clothes and nodded at Hua Si. "You're amazing." Hua Si took a sip of water and said lazily, "So, what are you here for this time?" Lu Yi calmed himself down and explained his purpose of coming. Hua Si nodded. "I see. I'll think about it." Lu Yi didn't force her. This kind of thing couldn't be forced. "Okay, take your time to think about it." He turned around and walked out. He saw Kong Nyo standing there and their eyes met. Kong Nyo forced a smile that was uglier than crying at Lu Yi. Ruan Lingyu stood aside with a red face, as if she didn't dare to look at Lu Yi. From time to time, she would steal glances. Lu Yi felt the need to explain to her that the little girl seemed to be frightened just now. However, before he could say anything, Ruan Lingyu spoke first. "Brother Yi, you're done so quickly?" After saying that, she realized that her words were inappropriate and continued, "I mean, don't you need to spend more time with Sister Hua Si?" Lu Yi took a deep breath and decided not to say anything. The door behind him opened and Hua Si stepped out. "I've thought about it." "So fast?" Lu Yi was stunned. "Aren't you pretty fast too?" Hua Si teased. Lu Yi stared at Hua Si's slender, fair neck and resisted the urge to strangle her to death. She suddenly realized that she had made a terrible mistake in coming to Hua Si. This kind of woman should be left to fend for herself. Hua Si explained to Ruan Lingyu and Kong Nyo, "You've heard that Yi is a disciple of the Jade Blood sect. He's here to bring us to the Jade Blood sect. I've decided to go with him. If you two are willing, you can come with us. If not, you can go on your own." Only then did Ruan Lingyu understand why Lu Yi had come all the way here. She nodded excitedly. "I'm willing." Kong Nyo remained silent and only nodded slightly. "Shall we go then?" Hua Si looked at Lu Yi. "Let's go." Lu Yi waved his hand. Things went unexpectedly smoothly this time. Originally, he was wondering if he should persuade Hua Si if she refused, but he didn't expect her to agree so readily. It must have something to do with what happened to the Scattered Wanderers Club. Originally, the club had 11 members, but now only 3 were left. This time, Lu Yi happened to be there and helped Hua Si kill the 7th Order cultivator, but there was no guarantee that she wouldn't encounter such a thing again. She wouldn't be so lucky every time. Going to the Jade Blood sect with Lu Yi was different. With Lu Ye's help, she shouldn't encounter such a thing again. The back of the giant eagle was very spacious, more than enough for 4 people to sit on. When the giant eagle flapped its wings and soared into the sky, Kong Nyo's face instantly turned pale and Ruan Lingyu screamed. Only Hua Si remained calm, but her clenched fists showed the uneasiness in her heart. After the initial discomfort, Ruan Lingyu soon became excited. She opened her arms and shouted from time to time. Even Hua Si looked down from time to time, like a little girl who had never seen the world. Kong Nyo sat upright, his face as pale as paper. Lu Yi saw that he was in a bad state and asked with concern, "Kong Nyo, are you okay?" Kong Nyo's lips squirmed, and he spat out a few words with difficulty. I'm fine, it's too high. Hua Xiai and Ruan Lingyu both looked at Kong Nyo in surprise. They didn't expect this tall and sturdy man to have such a weak side. Took Lu Yi almost 5 days to get here, and it was the same on the way back. A few days later, the giant eagle landed on the square of the Jade Blood Sex station. Several people jumped down one by one. Kong Nyo knelt on the ground with a thud, gasping for breath, like a drowning man crawling out of the water. The little girl, Ruan Lingyu, patted his back gently. Hua Xiai held her hands in front of her stomach and looked around. Is this the Jade Blood Sex station? Lu Yi took out a blood-red trout to reward Xiao Hui and nodded. It's a bit desolate. After all, no one has taken care of it for decades. After eating a few blood-red trout, Xiao Hui spread his wings and flew away, landing on a nearby mountain. Lu Yi urged the battlefield mark to send a message to his second senior sister to report that he was safe. Only then did he lead Hua Xiai and the others to walk around the station. Speaking of which, Lu Yi didn't know much about his own station. There were many places that he hadn't been to before. The place he went the most was the cultivation room, where he mainly cultivated. This exploration had its own fun. After finding a place for Hua Xiai and the others to stay, he led Hua Xiai and the others to walk around the market. It was Lu Ye's first time coming to the market. Chen Yu didn't know where he got the news and hurried to receive him. He seemed to think that Lu Yi was here to investigate the market, so he was very careful. He was naturally more attentive to Hua Xiai and the others, who followed Lu Yi and obviously had a special relationship with him. The market of the Jade Blood Sect was not small. It was larger than any of the markets that Lu Yi had seen before. It was located at the outermost area of the station. Rogue cultivators were cautious people. Even if no one had come to the Jade Blood Sect station for decades, they still didn't dare to go inside. Therefore, although it was bustling here, it didn't affect the station much. On the contrary, it was more lively. Having a market here was actually more convenient for Lu Yi because he mainly consumed spirit pills when he cultivated. However, he had more spirit stones now, so he could use spirit stones to buy spirit pills here. When Chen Yu learned that Hua Xiai was a medical cultivator, his attitude became even more enthusiastic. There were very few medical cultivators here. Once they were injured in a fight, those in good conditions would take some healing pills, while those in poor conditions could only rely on themselves to slowly recover. It was foreseeable that if Hua Xiai opened a medical clinic here, business would definitely be booming. After walking around, Hua Xiai and the others more or less understood this place. Lu Yi told them to act on their own and left. He hadn't returned to the sect for more than 10 days. Although he had sent a message to his second senior sister to tell her that he was safe, she was still a little worried. When he returned to the sect through the Tianji pillar, his second senior sister had already prepared a table of medicinal dishes. Lu Yi stuffed himself with food, but without his fourth senior brother beside him, it was a little less lively. Shui Yuan's didn't eat much, so she made them for Lu Yi. She picked up some food for Lu Yi and said, "If you think the people you brought back are trustworthy, you can accept them into the sect." Lu Ye's mouth was muffled. "Can I?" Shui Yuan smiled. "You're the guardian, so you have the right to decide whether to accept people or not. Before, you didn't accept people because of the situation, but now that you've opened your mouth, it doesn't matter anymore. Not only do you have to accept them, but you have to accept more. This is related to the future of the sect, and you can accept as many as you want. This way, if something happens at the station in the future, such as being declared war, you'll have people you can use." "Got it. You can consider the matter of accepting people on your own. The old man and I don't have any objections. Those rogue cultivators don't matter, but if you want to accept them into the sect, you have to bring them back to the sect. I have to register them and investigate their origins." "Yes." While they were eating, Yi ran over and sat beside Lu Yi, looking at him with a smile. What's the good news? Lu Yi looked at her. Nothing. Yi shook her head. I haven't seen you for a few days, so I came to see you. So mysterious. Lu Yi swallowed the food in his mouth. Right, I have something to tell you. Do you still remember that girl Ling Yu? Yes, and Sister Hua Si and the others. Yi nodded, then suddenly became nervous. What happened to them? Something happened at the Scattered Wanderers Society, and only 3 of them are left. Don't worry, Hua Si and Ling Yu are fine. I've already brought them to the station. Yi's eyes widened. You brought Ling Yu to the station? After saying this, she rushed out and said, I'll go see Ling Yu. Then he heard Yi shout, Hu puh, hu puh. Wait for me. Lu Yi turned around and shouted, but there was no response. He couldn't help but shake his head. You're in such a hurry. After finishing everything on the table in 2 or 3 bites, Lu Yi patted his stomach and stood up. Second senior sister, I'll bring her into the station. Go, Shui Yuan's replied and cleaned up the dishes. Lu Yi walked out and looked around, but he couldn't find Yi and Hu Puh. In the end, he confirmed that they were no longer in the sect. Walking into the station, he finally found Yi, who was chatting happily with Ling Yu. Lu Yi looked at her in confusion. How did you get in here? Yi was Hu Po's companion soul, and Hu Po was Yi's pet beast. Logically speaking, without Lu Yi and the others, they couldn't enter the station. Yi raised her right hand proudly. As she circulated her spiritual power, a battlefield imprint appeared on the back of her hand. Lu Yi was surprised. You have a battlefield imprint too? The sect master branded it for me. Yi giggled. I'm also a disciple of the Jade Blood sect. That worked? Lu Yi was a little shocked. But then again, this was a good thing. If Yi had a battlefield imprint, she could enter and leave the station with Hu Po at any time and wouldn't be restricted by Lu Yi. So, you're my junior sister? Lu Yi suddenly reacted. Yi stood up and bowed respectfully to Lu Yi. Jade Blood sect disciple Lu Yi greets senior brother Yi. Lu Yi immediately raised his hand to slap her. I think you're looking for a beating. Yi shrieked and immediately hid behind Hua Si. Then, she stuck her little head out and stuck her tongue out at Lu Yi.